And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, May 30th. I can't believe it's almost June. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by BetMGM. 13 MLB games to break down for today. We're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to zip through a lot of spots just because we have to. So buckle up, guys. We're going to have a quick ride, and then you guys can have MLB Live Before Lock take you all the way up until 7 p.m. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Our handles are below us. Adam, what's good?
How's it going? Looking forward to 13 games. Pretty much play whatever you want because nobody's going to be that popular.
No, it's going to be a fun one. I'm excited for this slate. I'm excited that it's 100K up top. It would have been a lot cooler if that was the case on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to one-upping you tonight.
I don't think the extra, I can't say that for certain, but I assume adding an extra 5,000 to 10,000 entries to that contest, I still would have been in pretty good shape given the win. So,
yeah, or you would have gotten that like you come in second, like 10 points ahead of third, but you still come in second.
Yeah. That probably would have been what is it, 130 or 125 or something today? I didn't look for second.
I mean, it's 25 to second. So like
it is 25 to second.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that would have cost me 25 grand if it would have happened like that.
Like, so somebody probably would have had like the unstacked nuts.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're gonna get into this now. Is my sim done? It is. Great. So we are just about ready to talk some baseball. I'm ready to dive in if you are, just because we don't have a lot of time to break this stuff down.
Yeah.
I have one big question for you when we get to it. So I'm anxious to see where we end up. But
yes, I like the Orioles.
I had them earlier. I have a lot of them now. So
yeah,
we might as well
I haven't run Sims or anything, so I don't know what I'm getting, but I figured that was your question.
DFIC hit us with the super chat, so I might as well hit on it first. He said, "Nice bink, Josh. Thank you. You've been mostly naked five stacking lately. Is that from the analysis you did with stacks last year?" No, it is not. I'm basically just generating as many 5-man stacks as I can, whether they're full 5 3s, 5 2s, or 5 blanks. I'm paying it no mind, and I have no idea which ones are getting in to my 150 when I play them. So if they were 155 threes, that would also be fine to me.
For what it's worth, I'm pretty sure I know why you're getting naked 5-mans, and I don't know if it's a problem or not.
Oh, I mean, I know exactly why I'm getting naked 5-mans.
That's like, it's the same thing for me, and we're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening because, well, I'm not setting any qualifications. So like, I should probably force more 5 3s just to exist in my pool.
Right. You're not accounting for correlation enough.
I also don't care all that much.
Right.
Honestly.
Like if you care, you're not accounting for it enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it either becomes really difficult to account for, or you just need to build more 5 3s.
Yeah, which is a very easy thing to do. And I should probably just make it so that I do have a little bit more of those options in my final pool, but it's not something that I'm paying that much attention to. At that point in time, I think I've got enough correlation, and I'm fine with having 150 like rando 3-man stacks.
Yeah, especially DraftKings where like it's home runs. So yeah, that's like, because the only reason I even mentioned it was like I've been looking through my lineups recently and been like, maybe you should be getting more 5 2, 5 3s in there, but also I don't know how much I care.
Yeah, it's not something I'm stressing about too much, but everything is 5. I haven't cared about anything other than that. Orioles and Guardians, 4.8 run implied total for the O's, 4.2 for the Guardians. Kyle Gibson and Cal Quantrill. Neither guy pulling any ownership from a pitching perspective. You know, they're probably both like 3 or 4 percenters. As weird as it sounds, I might like Quantrill more than I like Gibson, but I don't expect to have either guy.
Yeah, I don't expect to have either guy either. Cleveland has been the worst offense in baseball against right-handed pitching this year, which is not something I would have expected. I didn't expect them to be good, but it's pretty crazy that they're dead last, 78 WRC plus. Still a tough team to strike out, though. And I do expect them to get better as the year goes on, even if they don't become great. Gibson's not a great strikeout pitcher, though. Only about a 17% strikeout percentage this year. He's been okay in terms of limiting production so far. Has gotten a little bit lucky in some areas. 4.18 FIP, 4.6 xFIP. Decent, pitcher, but on a slate this size, I don't think you really need to get to him much. Quantrill has the lowest strikeout percentage on the slate. If you go to Fangraphs and sort by probable pitchers, you have to click to the next page just to get Cal Quantrill by himself if you sort by strikeout percentage. So not really looking to get to him either. You do get a weaker Orioles lineup than usual today. We don't have the lineup yet, but it won't have Cedric Mullins in it. But I still don't really anticipate getting to either pitcher.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Let's talk bats. Neither one of these teams is pulling all that much ownership. Guardians are 10th. The Orioles are 14th. We have the Guardians 6th in stack score. I'm a little bit lighter there, and I'm significantly heavier on the Baltimore bats. I have them 8th in terms of stack score, and relative to ownership being 14th, I am getting to quite a bit of the Baltimore Orioles. Right now, they are my second most exposed stack. I'm not mad about it. What are you doing with Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, I think Baltimore looks good. I don't know how much I'll get to because obviously there's going to be a lot of offenses that look pretty good today. But I do like that you're facing a pitcher in Quantrill that doesn't miss a lot of bats. 173 expected ISO to lefties this year with a 17.5% K percentage. Righties have a 229 expected ISO. That's over 100 points higher than his actual ISO so far. They're only striking out 8.5% of the time. Granted, pitching in Camden Yards, that's not where you're likely to see that regression come against righties because he can just give up some 360-foot fly balls for outs. But lefties can certainly do damage here. I mentioned it a minute ago. We're not going to have Cedric Mullins. He strained his groin yesterday. Don't know who's going to replace him. The Orioles did sign Aaron Hicks. He is going to be active tonight. Don't know if he'll be in the lineup or not, but you're still going to have, Adley Rutschman is a very good catching option as always. Santander's going to be hitting from the left side. Gunnar Henderson is cheap, $3,900. And I like the spot for him. I've talked about him a lot recently, but he's walking a lot this year. He's hitting the ball really hard when he hits it, and he's striking out a lot. Quantrill's a below average strikeout pitcher. He only walks about 7% of hitters. It's just a pitcher where you're kind of moving a little bit more towards ball being put in play. And when Gunnar Henderson puts it in play, he does hit it hard. So I really like him. You might have a cheap Terran Vavra in the lineup. You may have a cheap Ryan O'Hearn, Adam Frazier potentially leading off at a cheap price tag. There is a lot to like here from a combination of upside and value. Mullins not being in the lineup, while you are losing one of the highest upside players, you are getting more value as a result. On the Cleveland side, I don't really like it. Jose Ramirez, obviously, always going to be happy to play him. One of Naylor or Bell is perfectly fine from a power standpoint. Jimenez and Brennan have some power as well, but more likely to be getting the full Orioles stacks than Cleveland stacks.
We are on the same boat there, man. Go Orioles, I guess.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Won't be fun. I don't have anything else to really add for Cleveland. They're just sort of like middle of the pack option today. We've got 24 more teams to talk about. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about just the stuff.
Agreed.
Rank the game.
Orioles, Guardians, Gibson, Quantrill.
Agreed. Got nothing else. Blue Jays and Brewers. Man, I'm going to know how I'm doing very early. 60% of my exposure exists between games 1, 2, and 3 that we're going to talk about here. So if I'm not winning money by like 8:40, I'm going to go ahead and shut baseball off for the night. Blue Jays, 5-run implied total against the Brewers. Yusei Kikuchi going for Toronto. Adrian Hauser going for Milwaukee. Kikuchi actually getting a little bit of ownership. He's 10% owned right now, 8,400. That's basically exactly where I have him. It's a decent strikeout matchup. I think I'll be right around the field for Kikuchi. Not a lot to write home about, though.
Yeah, he's a boomer bust pitcher, but he's reasonably priced. And one thing from a general standpoint on this slate, there's plenty of decent pitching, but this mid-range, like $8,000 to $9,500 range, it has guys where it's like, okay, well, they're fine, but there's one or two things wrong. In Kikuchi's case, it's that he gives up a lot of power. He does get strikeouts. The Brewers do strike out a lot. They only have a 4.1 implied run total, but he's pitching in the Rogers Center, which plays up power, and he does have home run issues. So he's risky, but at 8,400, I don't mind getting to him a little bit. You mentioned around 10% ownership. I don't have any problem with that. On the other side, I don't anticipate getting to Hauser. He is a good pitcher in terms of run prevention, but not a good strikeout pitcher whatsoever. And then obviously has a brutal matchup here against Toronto.
Speaking of Toronto, they are less owned than the Milwaukee Brewers right now. Brewers are 14th in top stack, but first in top value. These guys are basically free today. How do you want to handle the value of the Brewers? I find them to be mostly uninteresting. And to be fair, a lot of their value is coming just from William Contreras and the fact that he is a catcher.
Yeah, Contreras I really like. The thing that's tricky with the Brewers is they have a cheap lineup and they're facing a pitcher that does give up a lot of home runs. But Darren Ruff leading off 2,100, obviously a good appealing price tag for a guy that does have some power, very likely to be coming out of the game as soon as you get a right-handed reliever in. Same goes for Mike Brosseau hitting 6th at 2,200. So those two, it makes it kind of tough to stack. I guess the hope if you stack would be that they just light up Kikuchi and they don't bother pinch hitting later in the game, which is possible, but it does make it tough. I really like Contreras as a catcher option. He has power. It's a weak position, good park, good matchup. Brian Anderson looks good, hitting 5th at 3,100, third base outfield. I don't mind Owen Miller hitting 2nd at 3K. Not the best hitter, but good spot in the lineup. But it's more so just kind of targeting those individual bats, I think, than I'm likely to get to full stacks. You can also go to Christian Yelich. Kikuchi's given up power to both sides. So I do think if you're full stacking, maybe mixing in Yelich, lefty, just to offset some of the ownership coming to the more popular right-handed bats makes sense. 273 expected ISO, 338 expected WOBA to lefties this year for Kikuchi. But I'm more likely, I think, to be getting to like 2-mans and 3-mans of like Contreras, Miller, Anderson, Yelich than full stacking.
What about the opposite side here? Blue Jays 8th in top stack, 16th in value. They're 13th in ownership. I'm actually quite a bit higher on the Blue Jays. This is a team that I am getting to right now. I like the run total. I don't mind the park. I think there's quite a bit of power in Toronto's lineup, and the most owned guy in the lineup is Bo Bichette at 6%. I like getting to Toronto at what I think is a relatively good value.
Yeah, so mostly they're just making me feel smart because when I did the show with Neil this morning, their implied run total was like 5.3, and I said I didn't quite get it against Hauser. It's now down to like 4.9, but it's still at their ownership an appealing spot. I don't think Hauser is a great pitcher to target against. I mentioned it earlier that he's been very good at preventing runs so far this year. He's got a 3.77 xFIP, 3.14 FIP, You look at what he's done against right-handed hitters in particular. He's held them to a 115 expected ISO, 298 expected WOBA. He's good at getting the ball, keeping the ball on the ground. He's good at limiting power, but the Blue Jays are also just an above average lineup in terms of power, really throughout the entire lineup. Like you have Alejandro Kirk hitting 8th. The only guy in this lineup that I kind of question if they can hit is Kevin Biggio, but he's hitting 9th with MPE. So if he gets in your stack, who cares? Brandon Belt also, up for debate at this point in his career. But overall, a lineup that just has tons and tons of power throughout it, and they're not getting ownership. So the fact that I think Hauser is a good pitcher, is good at preventing runs, not even think. The fact that he is good at preventing runs and power would matter to me a lot more if you told me that Toronto's coming in as one of the most popular teams on the slate, but they're not. And when Toronto's not popular and has a near 5 implied run total, I don't mind getting to them just because of how talented they are.
Yeah, they are currently my third most exposed team. And I'm very, very happy about that. I had them 5th in top stack. We have them 8th. So I'm a little bit higher on Toronto, and that's showing now in my exposure. But if I'm getting these guys loaded up, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and it is nice. I mean, the top of the order is expensive with Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, but you have a $2,500 cleanup hitter. Granted, you can't play Guerrero and Belt together on DraftKings, which sucks. Makes it much harder to stack when you can't get the 3 and 4 hitter together. But Whit Merrifield's 4K, Dalton Varsho's 3,700, Kirk's 3K. Like as a full stack, you can make this team affordable.
Rank the game. This one's tricky.
Oh, Brandon Belt is actually hitting well this year. I wanted to look because I knew he started out ice cold. He's up to a 112 WRC plus, still striking out 37.5% of the time. But
they don't matter on the hitting side.
What'd you say?
Glad that doesn't matter on the hitting side.
Yeah, 130 ISO leaves a lot to be desired also, but given how slowly he started, it is nice to see him coming around a bit. I think it's Toronto, Milwaukee, Kikuchi, Hauser, but I think the Milwaukee, Kikuchi pieces could very easily be flipped just depending on what you need in your lineup.
Yeah, I'm going Jays, Kikuchi, Brewers, Hauser.
Yeah.
Another game, and my most exposed team, Red Sox, 5.2 run implied total, Reds 4.2. Brian Bayo and Ben Lively pitching in this one. I definitely have an error with the Cincinnati Reds in some way because I don't have a leadoff hitter in. Also don't care. It's the Reds. Let's start with the pitching. 15% ownership coming to Bayo at 7K, none coming into Lively. Do you anticipate using Bayo as a value option?
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in Bayo here. I understand the risks that come with him as far as he's just been inconsistent so far in his major league career, but he's shown signs of improvement this year. And overall, the numbers this year are pretty solid. 23.5% strikeout percentage, 3.7 xFIP, 4.96 FIP. So he's been likely getting hit, or he's giving up a lot of home runs. Don't know if that's bad luck or getting hit hard, but in terms of ISO versus expected ISO, he's not been particularly unlucky. So it's probably a command issue there where he is giving up hard hit fly balls, but overall he is getting strikeouts. His walk rate's down a few points from last year. He has a 59% ground ball percentage this year, which is excellent. He had a 55% ground ball percentage last year. It's been a good skill for him going back to the minors. That was one of the reasons we really liked him when he came up, was he gets strikeouts, and when guys put the ball in play, it's typically on the ground. So I really like, for the most part, what we've seen from Bayo this year. And then you're getting a pretty solid matchup against Cincinnati. You are getting, Cincinnati's lineup does have some young talent in it. They, brought up Matt McLain. You have a pretty healthy team right now. It's not a complete pushover, but 4.2 implied run total. I think at a 7K price tag and modest ownership, the upside for Bayo is pretty appealing.
How do you want to handle the Red Sox bats? They are 3rd in ownership, 4th in top stack, 7th in value. They are the number 1 team in stack score. They're my number 1 team in stack score as well. I'm eating the chalk that exists for Boston and going even above and beyond here.
Yeah, I think they look pretty good. We don't have a lot of data on Ben Lively in the majors. He pitched in the KBO, for anybody that remembers him from over there. He's made
I do remember. Now I knew that name looked familiar to me.
Yeah, he pitched for NC Dinos, I think.
Sure.
He's made 4 appearances this year, 2 starts. The strikeouts have been there, but he doesn't project to be a good strikeout pitcher. Wasn't getting a ton of Ks in the minors, didn't get a ton of Ks in the KBO. There's no reason to expect that he's just going to start striking out, an elite percentage of major league hitters unless he made some insane changes. But it projects for like a 20% strikeout percentage going forward. So we don't have a lot of data on him, but we do know that we have a quality Red Sox lineup here. Tapia is leading off instead of Verdugo, which does weaken the lineup. But sort of like we were just talking about with the Orioles, it's made up for because you now have a $2,200 leadoff hitter on a team with a 5.4 implied run total. So even though he's not a great hitter, the value is still going to look pretty good there. Devers obviously is great. Turner, Yoshida, Duran, Casas, don't mind getting to any of those guys. It's a solid lineup. Even at, you have Kike in there hitting 7th. So there's a lot of ways you can approach stacking the Red Sox, and they do look like a very solid offense here against Lively.
We're not going to the Reds, right?
I don't think so. I mean, they're one of those teams where like there is at least a pretty obvious path to how they do well, and it's that Bayo has been giving up hard hit fly balls, and they do have a 4.2 implied run total, but they very much strike me more as the type of team that if this slate were like 8 or 9 games, I'd probably start getting some low in Cincinnati. On a 13 gamer, I think it's probably just going to fall off the board.
Okay. Rank the game.
Red Sox, Bayo, Reds, Lively.
There we go. Schedule for the rest of the day. Very easy. 1, you got to hit the like button to find out. I'll wait. Live Before Lock is next, 6 to 7. That's it. That's all we got for the rest of today. It's weird when there's no NBA going on. The alternative, if you don't want to think about NBA, sign up for the lineup generator. That is the thing that you should do right away. Link will be in the description or in chat. It's going to cost you less than $5 for your first week. If you've been looking to get into MLB and you haven't messed around with it yet, our lineup generator is going to help you. So we create thousands of lineups on the back end. We get rid of all of the ones that we think stink, and then we present the rest to you. You can click save when the lineup pops up, and you'll keep it. Or you can click discard, you'll get another one. We're showing you projections and ownership and optimal rates. We're going to allow you to do contrarian lineups and balance lineups and chalky lineups. You could lock a player, swap a player, export up to 20 lineups via CSV. If you want to play more lineups or just get into making better lineups, this is the tool for you. And it's $4.48 for the first week. If you hate it, cancel at any time during that first week. You're out $4.48. That's, to me, a pretty easy way to get into MLB DFS at a very low price point. So if you can, guys, you see it on the screen right now, come sign up for our lineup generator. We're going to New York. Mets 4.5 run implied total. Phillies 4. Still hard to get out of the NBA streets. Kodai Senga going for the Mets. Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies. Senga pulling 16% ownership. Suarez pulling 5%. Do you want to go to Senga? 9,700, the 5th most expensive pitcher today.
I think he's kind of interesting in large field tournaments just because the strikeout stuff is there, but he's definitely risky and you are paying a premium. The Phillies are not a bad offense. They do only have a 3.9 implied run total. No Bryce Harper today certainly makes things look a little bit better for Senga. Bottom of the order of Marsh, Clemens, Guthrie is not overly concerning. Certainly not as scary as when Harper is in one of those spots. Not that he's at the bottom of the order, but one of either the Marsh or Guthrie outfield spot. So it does look a little bit better for Senga. But the problem is just that you have other pitchers to pay up for that you can feel a little bit better about, at least in terms of them as a pitcher. Senga's struck out 28.5% of hitters this year. That's really good. He's walked 14.5% of hitters. That's really bad. Everything else is somewhere in between. 3.98 xFIP is fine. Pretty good. 4.3 FIP is fine. 1.13 home runs per 9. No real problem there. You just don't really know what you're going to get start to start. So I do like the upside he brings. His ownership has come up a bit today, though. This morning when I started writing my MLB article, I think he was like 8%. When I did the strategy show with Neil, he was like 11%. He's now 16%. So it does seem like we're projecting the field sort of to get more in line with where I thought he should have been. So, in large field tournaments at 9,700, you are getting a little bit of a salary discount off of the Gallen, McClanahan, Gilbert tier. And he's not super popular, but still a less than ideal spot for him. On the other side for Suarez, somewhat interested just because of the $5,200 price tag. It's a very difficult matchup against the Mets. Their active roster since the start of last year has a 116 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. They've struck out less than 20% of the time in the aggregate, but Suarez is 5,200 and just cheaper than his talent level. He's struggled a bit through his first 3 starts this year, but his underlying numbers are much better than his actual results. He's allowed a 250 ISO to lefties, only 27 pitches thrown, sub 100 expected ISO. 196 pitches to righties. He's allowed a 244 ISO and a 430 WOBA, 133 expected ISO, over 100 points below the actual 356 expected WOBA. Still not great, but like 80 points below what he's allowed so far. He threw his most pitches last start, like 80 or 85. So at 5,200, like this is just somebody that should be 6,500 or 6,800 or something. So if you have to pay down, he's playable, but more often than not, I'm just not going to need to pay down for him.
Do you plan on getting to either one of these offenses, 17th and 19th in ownership, and basically the exact same situation for their top stack scores?
Yeah, probably won't get to too much. I like Pete Alonso individually, but he's a $5,500 first baseman. It's not like we ever have a shortage of first base options. There's plenty of spots you can pay down and get power. Francisco Alvarez leading off at 3,100 is probably the best play from the Mets. He's been hitting 8th or 9th for most of the year, but massive lineup bump for him. He's one of the top hitting prospects in baseball. He has hit well so far. So I do like him a lot at 3,100. Outside of that, though, it's more like, yes, obviously you can play Trey Turner, Castellanos, Schwarber, Lindor. Like, nobody needs to tell you that, but there's nothing that really stands out to me from this game hitter wise outside of Francisco Alvarez.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Pitching or ranking the game should be easy ish.
Senga, Mets.
Or in the garbage after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mets / Suarez and then Phillies, I think. I'm going Mets ahead of Suarez just because I assume I'm going to get more Alvarez than Suarez.
Game number 5, Cardinals and Royals. 5-run implied total for the Cards, 3.8 for the Royals. Miles Mikolas going for St. Louis. Zach Greinke going for Kansas City, who I think pitches only on days that I do shows. Mikolas unowned at 7,700, essentially unowned. Greinke also unowned at 6,100. You getting any one of these guys? I mildly like Mikolas.
Mikolas is fine. He's just a guy. 17.5% strikeout percentage this year, 4.35 xFIP. 4.35 xFIP, 4.2 FIP, 1.2 home runs per 9. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. Decent matchup against KC. It's not a matchup that I consider a cakewalk because every hitter in the top 6 here is either already good or is a relatively highly thought of prospect. So, though, it can be tough to get through that part of the order. It does drop off once you get beyond that. But it's just a spot where he's 7,700. There's going to be some lineups where he's just useful from a price standpoint. So I wouldn't be upset if I don't get to Mikolas. I wouldn't be upset if I end up around the field on Mikolas. He's kind of just there. He's only getting 3% ownership, which does seem a little bit too low. But it also just, to me, signals that you probably don't need that price point all that much.
Then we can go to the bats. Cardinals, 6th in top stack, 8th in ownership, a little bit lower in stack score. They are kind of expensive. Do you like the Cardinals here against Greinke?
Yeah, Greinke hasn't been quite as bad as I would have expected this year, just given how old he is and the fact that he doesn't really have pitches. But he's not been good. He just hasn't been the total gas can I expected, but still a 170 expected ISO to righties, 222 to lefties. 5.2 implied run total for the Cardinals. It is in the mid 80s in St. Louis, so the ball should carry a little bit better as well. You have Brendan Donovan leading off at 2,800 with MPE. That's a pretty solid value. Alec Burleson hitting 6th at 2,300. Solid value there as well. Then 2 through 5 is just your normal, very high upside hitters with Goldschmidt, Gorman, Arenado, Contreras. So that's a pretty appealing combination of value and really high upside hitters. Paul DeJong at 3,800, perfectly playable as well. Really 1 through 9, they're at least competent hitters. So it does look like a good spot for the Cardinals. I do like getting there.
Okay. Are you going to get to your Royals? I feel like that is like sort of your team.
Yeah. I mean, they're running out the lineup that I like. Like I just said, 1 through 6, they're mostly cheap and not bad. Nick Pratto, 3,100 first base outfield. I like the value there. I like the fact that they're facing a pitcher in Mikolas that doesn't miss a lot of bats. 18% strikeout percentage to lefties, 17% to righties this year. 162 expected ISO to righties, 178 to lefties. Like I said before, he's just sort of there. Like he's not bad. He's not good. He's not somebody that I'm shying away from taking bats against. He's not somebody I'm going out of my way to get to. But I just really like how this lineup looks, where you can cover a weak catcher position with Salvador Perez. Granted, the catcher position probably not as or isn't as weak today when you have a cheap Contreras in a good spot, you have a cheap Alvarez in a good spot, you have Rutschman on the slate. So it's not, as like Salvador Perez isn't as valuable, but you're still getting a good catcher there. Bobby Witt covers shortstop, stolen base upside, power upside, really good player. Cheap Melendez, cheap Massey. Pasquantino is like perpetually underpriced at 3,800, just another good first base option. So I certainly wouldn't say the Royals are my favorite stack or anything, but at low ownership, I really like the combination, as I usually do, of cheap salary, high upside players, and them covering relatively weak positions.
Rank this game.
Cardinals, Royals, Michaelis, Greinke.
Yeah, I don't have much for this.
If you wanted to flip Michaelis and the Royals, I think that's fine.
Okay. Let's go to Cubs and Rays. 3.7 run implied total for the Cubs, 5 for the Rays. Kyle Hendricks and Shane McClanahan. I don't think we need to talk about Hendricks all that much at 6,600. He is unowned right now. I do think we need to talk about Shane McClanahan, 15% owned, but 11,400. He's the number one pitcher in terms of salary on today's slate. Do you have any problems paying that salary for today?
No. In individual lineups, of course, but in terms of if I can afford it, do I care that I'm, if I have cheap bats, do I care that I'm paying 11.4 for McClanahan? No, he's a really good pitcher. 29% K percentage this year, 3.6 xFIP, 3.33 FIP. You have the wind blowing in a little bit in Wrigley, nothing too crazy. But yeah, he's just a solid pitcher. Not the best matchup against the Cubs, but still only a 3.5 implied run total. I'm not likely to be going out of my way to jam in McClanahan at that price. I do think that there is one pay up option that is just better in Zach Gallen. And then guys like, when you factor in salary and the discount you're getting, guys like Senga, Gilbert are very comparable. And that's why you see very similar ownership across all three of those guys. But any lineup I look at that has McClanahan, it's not like I'm going to be upset about it.
Okay. What else can we touch on here? I guess we need to talk bats. We're certainly not any scenario.
I want to reply to something Chuck Deuce has said in chat quickly.
Go for it.
He said the Royals are second worst WRC plus versus righties. Be careful looking at that. I know I reference it. I know other people reference it just because it's like a quick data point. But when you look at, especially assuming that you look at it the same way I do on FanGraphs, where you're looking at it by team, it is including players on the bench, not in the starting lineup. And Kansas City is a team that has a lot of, does have very bad hitters, but their actual lineup, 1 through 6, is not bad. So there are spots, and Kansas City is one of them, where I think if you're looking at the aggregate, they are going to look much worse than the actual hitters that are going to the plate.
Okay. We're not going to roster the Cubs today, right?
I'm not planning on it, no.
Okay, talk to me about the Rays then. 3rd in top stack, 5th in ownership. A little bit lower in stack score. They're pretty expensive, but mildly appealing given their high top stack odds.
Yeah, I like them here. If the wind weren't blowing in, I'd like them a little bit more, but they still have a 5-run implied total. They have the best WRC plus in baseball against right-handed pitching. It's not even close. Josh Lowe leading off. The only problem is that they're expensive. The top 4 hitters in this lineup are at least 4,900 on DraftKings. Then you do get some savings with guys like Harold Ramirez, Paredes, Luke Raley. Not necessarily the guys that you're most excited to get to, but still guys that have some power. So Hendricks also making his 2nd start since returning from injury. He's probably not very good. He's somebody that I never thought was good and just continued to magically be good. His last couple of seasons, he's had his xFIPs jumped to 4.8 to 4.9. We don't know what he is right now. I assume he's on the back end of. I doubt he's in the major leagues, in a few years. He's somebody that's always had a very small margin for error, and as guys like that get even worse, obviously they disappear pretty quickly. So I do like the upside here for Tampa, but they are pretty expensive.
Okay. Just wanted to get some thoughts here. Do you like Tampa bats more or less than McClanahan?
More. Just,
okay.
In fact, I think they're just probably easier to get to.
I'm in between. I don't have a great feel between the two. I probably like McClanahan more. I think it's pretty close. I think they're pretty neutral, all things considered. I definitely don't like Hendricks and the Cubs.
Agreed.
There we go. All right, guys, hit that like button. We're about halfway through. 511 viewers, 100 likes. That is not going to cut it, folks. We need a couple extra thumbs up for today. It's a great Tuesday. I think you would help us out quite a bit if you hit that thumbs up. You should help yourself out a bit by signing up for our sponsor. That is BetMGM. If you are in a legal betting state and you have not done this yet, stop what you're doing right now. Go sign up at BetMGM. Click the link in the description or the one that pops up in chat. Here's the deal. This is the biggie. Right out of the gate, you get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. That covers every single one of the sports that we have. Baseball, NBA for at least a little bit longer, NHL for a little bit longer, MMA, NASCAR, PGA, lots and lots and lots of options for you. Projections, ownership, top stacks, top pitchers, top everythings for most of these sports. That's not where we end this, though. $1,000, up to $1,000 in bet credits if your first bet loses. So my recommendation, put in as much money as you can when you sign up. Your first bet is a good spot for you because if it wins, you just keep that money in your account. You move on. Doesn't matter at all. Everything just stays. The promotion is mostly irrelevant to you at that point. If you lose, however, whatever you put into that first bet, you get it back in bet credit. So you basically get another shot at it. My recommendation is to take a bit of an underdog in your first run, see if you can build yourself up a sizable bankroll. But you're getting a get out of jail free card for your first bet. This is a no-brainer option for you. If you're looking to get into sports betting, we obviously have tons of options on the odd shopper side as well that can help you. Even if you're not really looking to get into sports betting, this is a great way to just try to make yourself some money with essentially no risk. That's the direction you should go. So the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. And if you or someone you know has a bit of a gambling problem, you should call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Click that link in the description or in chat. Sign up today, folks. Who doesn't like more money? I know I do. Astros and Twins, 4-run implied total for the Stros, 4.2 for the Twins. Brandon Bielak going for Houston. Joe Ryan going for Minnesota. Ryan, 5% owned at 11,100. Second most expensive pitcher behind Shane McClanahan. Obviously an awful matchup. Let's start with Ryan now. Should he be more than 5% owned?
Probably. He has maintained, so his ownership's actually gone down as the day has gone on, probably in part because Houston's implied run totals jumped a quarter of a run. But he's just one where there's nothing about his projection is going to get you to him at 11-1 against the Astros on this slate. But he is still a good pitcher, and he does still have the ability to have a very good start. He has a 29% strikeout percentage this year, 4% walk percentage, 3.32 xFIP, 2.38 FIP. Like his numbers this year across the board are very comparable to McClanahan, who is similarly priced and getting 4 times the ownership. So from that aspect, yes, he's going under-owned, but from a in practice standpoint, I still doubt that I'm likely to get much of him just because paying over $11K for a pitcher against the Astros at any ownership just isn't likely to be the approach that I take.
Okay. We're on the same page there. I don't mind if I get it. I don't like the spot at all. You want to go to any Bielak on the opposite side? 6,800?
Not really. There are strikeouts in the Twins lineup, but I actually think they're getting slept on a little bit. And I think their lineup right now is really good looking.
Is that Bielak or Bielak? Bielak?
I think it's Bielak, but I'm not sure.
I don't care.
I've never actually looked that one up.
Yeah, I don't really care. I think
pitch better, and I'll figure out how to pronounce his name.
Exactly. I mean, in terms of our top pitcher tool, and even mine, probably a little under-owned as a $6,800 option here. There's a lot of strikeouts in that Minnesota lineup, so it's worth a shot, I think.
Yeah,
he's not interesting.
He's playable, but there's a lot of guys like that where, Bayo is my preferred guy in that range. But do I think Bayo's 3-4 times better than Bielak? No. Oviedo is playable. Michaelis is playable for, a little bit more. But I don't think I'm going to need to get there. Like you said, there are strikeouts. He hasn't been great at getting them on his own this year. He's only striking out 17.5%. He's giving up 2.1 home runs per 9. Probably is running a little bit bad there. But a guy that hasn't been very good at getting strikeouts, facing a team that does have a lot of power in the lineup, I'm concerned about how that's going to go for him.
Okay. Well, let's talk bats here. I guess we need to start on the Twins side. They are 5th in ownership, whereas Houston is 20th. Our stack score quite a bit lower than the ownership coming into the Twins. Most of the ownership, though, to the Twins is coming into one player because they left Royce Lewis's salary at 2K for the second straight day. So while the Twins may be looking like they're chalky, they are not, in fact, chalky. Royce Lewis is probably, this is going to be pretty close. Royce Lewis has the exact same amount of ownership as the other 8 guys in the Minnesota lineup combined. So don't think about that as a chalky stack. Lewis is somebody you want to play in cash games because you should. What do you see here in terms of stacking either Minnesota or Houston?
So for one, I'm also really surprised we have a 29% ownership projection on Lewis simply because he was 15% yesterday on a 5 or 6 game slate. Obviously, there's more shortstop options today with 2 to 3 times as many games. That number seems like it might end up being like 15 and not 29. But at the same time, like I get the ownership projection because he's so clearly a ridiculously good value. He looks great. I think you're right. Like he's most likely your cash game shortstop, unless you just somehow have an abundance of money. But he's former number 1 overall pick. He's torn his ACL twice, so it slowed down his route in getting to the Twins, but tore up the minor leagues in his rehab starts, homered yesterday, gives you stolen base upside, home run upside. He's hitting 6th. Really like him individually, but really like this lineup. They're not that expensive. They have a lot of power. Joey Gallo's leading off at 4K, multi-position eligible against a pitcher that doesn't get a ton of Ks and gives up power. That is a good recipe for Joey Gallo. Lefties this year have only struck out 13.5% of the time against BLAC. Righties are striking out 24.5%. They've both hit him well. 223 expected ISO to lefties, 299 to righties. But, the strikeout stuff hasn't even been there so far against lefties. So you have Gallo from the left side, Julian hitting second at 2,700 from the left side. He's got some pop. Kirilloff hitting 5th at 3,200, also multi-position eligible. Kepler is back. So not only did the Twins just get Lewis back from injury, they also got Kepler back hitting 7th at 3,900. And then clearly you can still go to Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Lewis. I actually really like this stack.
It is an interesting one, isn't it?
Like just the combination. Yeah. I mean, I realize they only have a 4.3 implied run total, and we're talking about a 13-game slate where a bunch of teams are higher. But just the combination of salary and guys that can hit the ball really, really far is pretty appealing. And then also, like Lewis will steal, Buxton will steal. Like there's some stolen base upside here as well.
Not going to Houston here against Joe Ryan, right?
I don't really think so. Houston's just one of those like Alvarez is great. We know Tucker's really good. Like nobody's going to talk you off of rostering anybody. Or stacking Houston, but they are relatively expensive. It's kind of like the inverse of Joe Ryan. I don't hate the idea of playing Joe Ryan at low ownership against the Astros. It just becomes really hard to do when he's $11,100. I don't hate the idea of playing a low owned Astros stack ever. It's just really hard to pay up for these guys on a 13-game slate when they're facing somebody that's been one of the better pitchers in baseball this year.
Rank the game if you can. This is a hard one.
It's really tough. I think in terms of and I haven't built lineups, but in terms of what I would expect to get to, I think it's Minnesota, or what I want to get to, put it that way. It would probably be Minnesota 1. And then I don't know. I don't care. If I get to Houston, great. Unowned Astros sounds fun. Same goes for Ryan, but I think they're both just gonna be so tough to get to. Belak might actually show up as the guy that I use, the part that I use the second most, just because he's cheap, but it's not like I want to get there either. This is a really hard game to actually rank.
White Sox and Angels, 4.9 run implied total for the White Sox, 4.2 for the Angels. Lucas Giolito going for Chicago. I don't think that I noticed that he was pitching today until right now. Tyler Anderson going for the Angels. Giolito is 11% owned. Anderson is unowned. I guess we'll start with Giolito, although in terms of value, Tyler Anderson is interesting. 5,700 is a price tag. What do you want to do with $9,200 Giolito? Seems fine, I guess, at 10% owned.
Yeah, he's another one. Most of the guys in this price range, I think, are just sort of fine. They're mostly good, but then there will be one thing you can point to that isn't ideal. For Giolito, it's that, he has clearly taken steps back over the last couple of years, but he is still striking out 24% of hitters, 4.2 FIP, 4.4 xFIP. He's just kind of a average pitcher in terms of run prevention, does have decent strikeout stuff. There are some strikeouts in the Angels lineup. He's been particularly vulnerable to left-handed power, which the Angels don't have a ton of, but they do have Shohei Ohtani, who sets up really nicely here. Mickey Moniak's been playing well and likely to be hitting at the top of the order at like 3,500. I like Moniak. Clearly, Mike Trout is always a good play. Renfroe and Drury have a bunch of power. Jared Walsh is free. Matt Tice is free. So it's not a bad spot. It's just, when you see Shohei Ohtani in particular, Mickey Moniak probably leading off, and then Mike Trout, it's still, things can go bad in a hurry. Like, it's not unusual to see a start like we got from Michael Kopech yesterday, where Kopech racked up a bunch of strikeouts here, but gave up 2 home runs in the first inning, and that kind of just capped him at like 16 DraftKings points. Somebody said Moniak's not starting. I haven't seen the lineup yet. If Moniak's not starting, I do like the spot better for Giolito.
He is not starting.
When did that lineup come out?
I don't know. I got like 8 of them when we first started. So.
Oh yeah, it came out a while ago.
Yeah.
I had not refreshed.
I like the White Sox bats, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I like Jake Burger sitting second.
Burger, Lubob, Eloy, all pulling about 10% owner, 10 to 15% ownership. Nobody else is really grabbing all that much. I have these guys ranked a little bit higher than we do. So I'm actually getting to the White Sox now. We'll see how this all ends up at the end.
Yeah, I like the way the lineup looks. Tyler Anderson's not my favorite guy to stack against. He's got a weird delivery. He can be tough to hit. Doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. 179 expected ISO to righties is perfectly fine to take hitters against. But I just like the amount of right-handed power here and the fact that they're pretty cheap. Jake Burger at 3,300, that's a lot of power for that price tag. Jimenez hitting cleanup at 3,200, same thing. Andrew Vaughn at 3,400. First base only, which sucks. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just, it was easier when he had outfield. Robert looks good. Anderson's a solid shortstop option. So I do like the way this White Sox lineup sets up. And I did want to go back to Giolito now that I have the correct Angels lineup. Not only is Moniak not in there, but Tice isn't in there as well. You have Chad Wallach. So only 2 left-handed hitters in this lineup. Giolito has held righties this year. Similar strikeout percentages to both sides, 23.5% to righties, 24 to lefties. But lefties have the 244 expected ISO. Righties are only at 141. The expected WOBA to righties, 327 compared to 315. So it's a little bit higher, but it's not like it's bad. I do think that the Angels are running out a lineup that is slightly more favorable for Giolito.
I like Giolito quite a bit here. I've got 27%. We have him projected for 11. That is the spot I'm getting to now in a decent matchup. I like that lineup. Rank the game.
White Sox, Giolito, Angels, Anderson.
Yeah, that works for me. Mariners and Yankees, 3.9 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.3 for the Yankees. This is a pitcher's duel. 19% ownership coming to Logan Gilbert at 10,200. 21% ownership coming to Nestor Cortez at 8,600. Which pitcher do you prefer, considering they're both relatively the same ownership?
If I can just afford either one, I prefer Gilbert. I think he's better. Sure. But I could certainly see where you get to a little bit more Cortez just because he's cheaper. Cortez scares me because he was never supposed to be a really good pitcher. And he's done it mostly on deception and just, changing up his deliveries, weird deliveries, changing up his arm angles. He's been good at getting strikeouts this year. He's not been very good at anything else, which we've seen enough of him that it's likely he just goes back to being good. But it does just concern me when you're talking about guys that didn't necessarily have the most talent and have just been maximizing their talent for a few years out of nowhere. When they start to drop off, it does concern me a little bit. But that concern is pretty much mitigated by the fact he's down to $8,600. He's also pitching in one of the best pitchers parks in baseball in Seattle. So that's pretty nice. Not an ideal matchup, 115 WRC plus for the Mariners against left-handed pitching since the start of last year. But the park helps. The price tag is reasonable. On the other side, Gilbert's been fantastic this year. He has struck out 29.6% of hitters, highest on the slate outside of Ben Lively and John Brebbia, who don't count because they don't pitch enough. But 29.6% K percentage, only walking 4% of hitters, 25.3% strikeout minus walk percentage is the best on the slate outside of the guys that don't count. 3.03 xFIP, 2.8 FIP. Really, really good pitcher. And while the Yankees are dangerous, the bottom of this order really isn't very good. If you can navigate the Torres, Judge, Rizzo part, you should normally have success. Obviously, LeMahieu's tough to strike out, so that's not ideal. But you're getting a discount off of McClanahan. You're getting a discount off of Joe Ryan. I like getting to Gilbert if you can afford it.
Yeah, I'm not really getting to a lot. I'm just getting to all of the Zach Gallen, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But I wouldn't mind getting to any more Logan Gilbert. I'm not really getting to Cortez either. This is an interesting game. I'm not getting to the pitching or the hitting. I'm just kind of hoping this one is uninteresting, which is not what I love. There's probably a decent spot coming out of here for one of these guys.
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I'm mostly avoiding this game.
I think the thing that concerns me the most, if you're not getting to any of it, is that the hitters aren't very expensive. So, like, Gilbert's expensive enough at 10-2 where he could just have, a mediocre outing and you don't need him, but you don't need the Yankees. The other side's a little bit more difficult. Like, Cortez is cheap for his strikeout stuff at 8,600.
Yeah.
If he struggles to pay off 8,600, you're probably getting some pretty good plays from a Seattle team that only has one hitter above $4,400. But
yeah, my problem right now is just like I'm just getting Giolito instead of Cortez.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's perfectly fine. And also, it's a 13-game slate, so like it's not like you have. This isn't a 5-game slate where like if a team does well, you have to have them.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that you have to not play today. You can't have all of the 9K plus.
Right.
Pitchers.
Like there's going to be plenty of players where you're just like, oh damn, I wish I had that guy, and then they're not even in a winning lineup.
Yeah. Rank the game. This should be simple, I guess. I mean, it's Gilbert 1.
Sort of. I mean, you could make a case it's Cortez 1.
Fair.
One of the pitchers 1, one of the pitchers 2, one of the offenses 3, one of the offenses 4.
I think it has to be Mariners before the Yankees just because of who's facing who.
Yankees have Aaron Judge though. But yeah, I do think that the Mariners side is where you would go first.
Okay. Go A's and Braves. 3.5 run implied total for the A's, 5.3 for the Braves. Man, the A's are dog shit. Whew. JP Sears
better than the Orioles AAA team.
Wow, that's true. JP Sears going for Oakland. Is Sears still a thing? Is that why he pitches for Oakland? Do people still go to Sears?
Oh, I was like, I'm confused where you're going with this. Yeah, one of the key pieces of the Montas trade.
The entirety of the Sears company.
Yeah,
you used to be able to buy houses at Sears. They would ship you your entire house.
What?
That's a thing. Yeah. Houses back in the day, you could buy an entire kit to build your entire house via Sears, and it would just all show up.
Okay, 1, that sounds completely made up. 2, it sounds like something that you would expect to be like happening now and not a long time ago.
I mean, there's less bells and whistles back in the day. It was like, this is your foundation. This is your walls. This house has 3 rooms and you're done. Like there's not a lot of like, oh, it has arch ceilings and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, no, you could order your house out of a catalog.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So did you have to put it together yourself or like?
I mean, you hire surely. Well, it's up to you, I guess. Yeah. I don't think Sears really gives a fuck how you do it.
I guess my question was like, does Sears do they have like, the Best Buy like installation team that comes and puts your house together?
Probably not. If I had to guess, you just hired a local company or did it yourself.
Oh, is that how you know this? Red Dead Redemption 2?
No.
Yeah, okay. I haven't played it, but he said it's true. Haven't you played Red Dead Redemption? And I know you have, so I assume that's where you were getting this from.
Not why I knew that. Bryce Elder pitching for Atlanta, by the way, after I went a little off the beaten path there. Bryce Elder, 9,300, 20% owned. Basically the same as Logan Gilbert and basically the same as Senga and basically the same. Most of these guys are all the same at like 20% owned. How do you feel about Elder against Oakland?
I like him. I said earlier that most guys in this price range have like at least one thing that you don't love. In Elder's case, it's that his strikeout percentage doesn't exactly warrant a $9,300 price tag at 21.5%. But other than that, everything's good. And the matchup against Oakland certainly is reason to bump that price tag up. 3.58 xFIP, 3.46 FIP this year, not giving up power, doesn't walk a lot of guys, pitching in a favorable pitcher's park, pitching against a minor league baseball team, 3.2 implied run total. Everything looks really good for Bryce Elder. If you can find the salary, I do slightly prefer him to Nestor Cortez, but I realize there's going to be sometimes you just can't find $700.
You're not going to Sears, right?
I don't think so. Strikeout stuff's good. Park's good. Like you could make that sort of upside case at a $7,300 price tag, but really, really scary matchup with the Braves. We don't have their lineup yet, but assuming it is some semblance of their normal lineup, you're probably getting like 7 righties in there. He has struck out righties 26.5% of the time this year, but he's also allowed a 256 expected ISO, 346 expected WOBA. He's been really good against lefties in terms of limiting production. Sub 100 expected ISO, 293 expected WOBA. Weirdly, he's only struck them out 11% of the time. I don't know what to really make of that. But overall, no, I don't expect to get the series.
All right. The Atlanta Braves are the number one owned team today, second in top stack. They are fifth in stack score. I'm a little bit lighter on their top stack rank in terms of everybody else, but they clearly look good here. I'm also pretty aggressively fading the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, they look good. They are popular, like you said. The ownership can be a little bit misleading when you have 19% going to Acuna. The next highest owned guy is Murphy at 13. Murphy, again, another great catching option. He's been fantastic this year. But, you have the ownership coming in there. They're not, at least the guys you want to get to aren't that cheap. The park sucks. Like, that's the biggest thing is that, they're playing in Oakland. You do have a pitcher in Sears that's been giving up power this year. You have a terrible Oakland bullpen behind them, so plenty of upside for add-on runs. I think the Braves look really good, but with the ownership they're getting, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up just going to some of these lower-owned teams that have similar chances of success.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too. Do they grade out well? Yeah, absolutely. But if I can get a couple teams at half the ownership with basically the same top stack odds, I'm just going to go those directions in larger field contests. But clearly cheering for the Braves. I'm repping the Braves in my gear. Braves 1, Elder 2. Who cares about the A's 3 and 4?
Pretty much. I would go Sears 3 just because hitting's harder than pitching. But yeah, tough to get to Oakland.
Diamondbacks and Rockies. 5.3 run implied total for the D-backs. 3.3 for the Rockies. Zach Gallen and Kyle Freeland. Kyle Freeland unowned. Zach Gallen, 32% owned. I have 69%. I think Zach Gallen very clearly is the best option you can get to today.
I think he is too. He's the only top-end pitcher on this slate that has a matchup you actually like. Yeah. And it's a really good one. The Rockies have sucked everywhere this year, but now you're getting them outside of Colorado as well. Even factoring in, this isn't just, the Rockies away from home or anything. Overall this year against right-handed pitching, 93 WRC plus, 22.3% strikeout percentage, including the games that they've played in Coors Field. Just unbelievably bad offense and a really good pitcher in Gallen. This isn't like we just talked about the Oakland game where Bryce Elder is good, but typically not a $9,300 pitcher, but you have the matchup with the A's. Gallen, just on his own, regardless of who he's facing, deserves a $10,700 price tag. He struck out 28.3% of hitters this year, doesn't walk guys, 2.1 FIP, 3.15 xFIP, really good stuff. And then now he also gets one of the best matchups possible. Absolutely love Gallen. I like in the top pitchers tool, we don't have his top 2 percentage that much higher than guys like Cody Senga or McClanahan or Gilbert. I see it a little bit differently where I would not be surprised or I would not be upset at all if you have, a 16% ownership coming into all of Senga, McClanahan, Gilbert. And for me, a lot of that just turns into Zach Gallen.
That's basically what's happening for me. He's in basically 2/3 of all of my lineups. He just, to me, grades out so much better than everybody else. The floor just seems so high here against the Rockies. I'm going to have him everywhere, and I'm cool with it. No complaints. I'm not going to have Kyle Freeland, though.
No, not going to Freeland.
Do you want to get to the Arizona Diamondbacks bats? They're 7th in ownership, 4th in top stack. I think they're basically appropriately owned, but it's certainly a good spot.
Yeah, I do too. They were another team this morning that I was a little bit surprised at how high their implied run total was. This one hasn't moved, which typically just means that for whatever, I'm wrong and they're going to go off. But they're a team where I have a hard time, kind of like Toronto, where I have a hard time explaining exactly why I would think they do well. I don't think Kyle Freeland's great, but he's not terrible. The Diamondbacks do have plenty of good hitters in their lineup, but Freeland being left-handed does help mitigate Corbin Carroll. But still, they do look good. They're reasonably priced. Rivera's hitting second at 2,900. Longoria hitting fifth at 3,100. Both very reasonable value plays. They do play the same position on DraftKings. So once again, another team where you cannot stack 1 through 5, which that kind of sucks. But Ketel Marte back in the lineup. He looks good. Either of the third basemen look fine. I would lean Rivera since he's hitting second. Really like Gurriel and Walker. So yeah, it's a good stack. I I could see me getting to them a little bit less than some other stacks just because of the positions. You don't have a single guy in this lineup that has multi-position eligibility on DraftKings. Your cleanup hitter Walker looks good, but he's first base only, and there's a million good first base plays, so it becomes difficult to just jam him in. Marte, second base only. Second base, obviously a weaker position, but you do have some good value there, like Michael Massey on the Royals, Adam Frazier leading off for the Orioles. There's ways you can just save money there. Third base is going to give you plenty of upside typically as well. So they're kind of like the inverse of Kansas City, where these guys certainly look better than the Royals do, but Kansas City, you can stack the best guys in that order and cover like your weakest positions. Whereas here, the stack, not only can you not do 1 through 5, but if you stack the guys that you want the most, it's going to leave you in a position where a lot of times you're like finding one-offs at relatively weak positions.
Rockies bats?
No.
Gallon Diamondbacks, who cares?
Gallon Diamondbacks, Freeland Rockies.
Giants and Pirates. We got 2 games left. We're at the top of the hour. Apologies to Live Before Lock. We're going to get through this as quick as we can. So Sean Manaea supposed to be the long man for the Giants. Johan Oviedo going for the Pirates. No ownership coming into Manaea. Am I crazy that he's interesting today at 5,900?
Yes and no. So earlier he was getting 12% ownership, which I was like, I have no interest if that's the case.
Earlier I was getting more than that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you've seen what the perfect scenario for him is. It was 2 appearances ago out of the bullpen, 3 2/3, struck out 8 guys. Like you can get that. The thing that I run into here is just that there's so many pitchers on the slate. I don't really want to be grabbing a guy throwing 3 to 4 innings and hoping that he just strikes out every hitter he faces.
Yeah.
Like it just strikes me as a spot.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, like if he shows up, fine. I feel the same way about Oviedo on the other side. But same. Like I would rather go to Suarez for 5,200. Like he's gonna, even in a good case for Manaea, you're like if they both pitch well, you're probably getting 10 to 15 more pitches from Suarez. Manaea does have good strikeout stuff. He's been awful other than that. It's just, it feels like the range of outcomes is skewed towards the poor side for you when like, yeah, he could go out there and dominate and get you like 24 DraftKings points, but he could also pitch 3 innings and you're just done with like, 12.
Same situation for you on the opposite side. Like if you're looking for value, Oviedo's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. He showed up like the first lineup generator this morning that Neil made had Oviedo. And it was just one of those lineups where it wasn't giving you Oviedo because Oviedo was a great play. It was giving you Oviedo because you had like Zach Gallen and some expensive 5-man stack with some good one-offs and Oviedo fit. It's a good park to pitch in, but I'm not targeting either pitcher.
All righty. Are you targeting either set of bats here? Giants are 14th in ownership. Pirates are 22nd. I mean, if you're going anywhere, it's probably the Giants, but I don't really see either one of these guys as a priority. Giants are cheap.
Yeah, I don't really see either one as a priority, mostly because the park just does so much to suppress power, and that really matters on DraftKings. It matters on FanDuel, but not quite as much. They are cheap, like you said. Still doubt that I get them much.
All right. Well, let's close this one out. Final game before we turn this one over to Live Before Lock. Dodgers and Nats, 5.7 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.2 for the Nats. Tony Gonsolin and Jake Irvin. You're not going to Irvin. Tony Gonsolin's pulling 15% ownership at 8K. I don't have that much. I wouldn't mind it in this spot, but it's not a great strikeout matchup.
It's not a great strikeout matchup. He's unlikely to go super deep into the game. He's gone 6 innings once this year, but we have seen at least 80 pitches in 5 straight. So he's at least getting opportunities to, get you to 6 innings. He went 5 2/3 last start. So it's not like they just pulled him after 5. You do have the lowest implied run total on the slate for the Nats. This just strikes me as a spot where he's going to get some ownership and should get some ownership just because the Nats are unlikely to score runs. The strikeout matchup isn't great. He doesn't have great strikeout stuff. He has struggled overall this year, but typically he's just a good real life pitcher. And we haven't talked about anybody in this mid-range that you're just like, oh, this guy looks great. So he certainly should be getting ownership very similarly to, guys like Kikuchi and Cortez and other guys we've talked about in that range.
Second in ownership, that would be the Dodgers bats. They're second in top stack as well. They are my number 1 stack in terms of top stack score. I'm a little bit higher on the Dodgers, and I am getting to the Dodgers, but I'm mostly neutral here. They're pulling some ownership. I'm okay with that ownership, and that's what I'm getting. What do you want to do with the Dodgers? Late night hammer.
Yeah, happy to play the Dodgers here. Highest implied run total on the slate. getting a bit less ownership than Atlanta, mostly because they don't have a Ronald Acuna piece pulling 20%. Betts leads the way at 14.5. But you can offset ownership with these stacks as well. James Outman, 3,700, pulling 6% ownership. Muncie's at 9. Martinez is at 5. Like, you can mix in some pretty low owned guys here if you're worried about ownership. It's also a 13 game slate. So, I mean, when the most highest owned guy is 14%, it's not like that's a massive issue either. So, yeah, I definitely like getting to the Dodgers. Irvin doesn't project as somebody that's likely to be a very good major league pitcher. He certainly hasn't been so far in his limited time in the majors. 263 expected ISO to lefties, 166 to righties is decent. 380 expected WOBA is problematic. So definitely happy to get to the Dodgers. Wind also blowing out a bit in LA. It is also only 60 degrees.
Favorite stacks?
That's tough. I'll go Dodgers, Tampa, Boston.
I'm going to go Red Sox, White Sox, Dodgers right now. Orioles, 4.
That works. Yeah, and I mean, my answers were basically using the top stacks tool and ownership. I haven't built lineups, so like there's so many teams that look similar today that I don't know my actual exposures. I would not be mad if they are Dodgers, Rays, and Red Sox.
Favorite pitchers?
Gallen, Elder. Trying to go like one from each tier. Gallen, Elder, and Bayo.
Folks, thank you for watching this bad boy. You don't have to go anywhere. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Thank you to Adam for joining me. Thank you to Jordan for producing. Thank you to BetMGM for being the sponsor. Don't forget to sign up at BetMGM or sign up for the lineup generator. All of those links are in the description. Don't go anywhere. Stay on this stream. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next.
Yo, it's that time of week again. Yeah, here we go. Inducting you fine people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame and dishing out this week a ton of free Stochastic Plus memberships, $120 value. All you got to do to get up here on the board, greatest day of your life, get inducted, get the free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, is download the stochastic.com avatar. At stochastic.com/avatar. Use it wherever it is you play and tweet your wins at Stochastic HOF. You finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and boom, you're in. Just have to have a Twitter account and play DFS with the avatar. Get the free month, get inducted. We got a lot of great ones today, so let's dive into it. First one, our own Josh Engleman. Don't worry, Steve Buzzard, I'll take it from here. 50K. Saturday over the weekend, our boy took down 50K in the relay throw, and it was a blowout, not even close. Shout out to Josh. You'll be seeing more of him and myself all over the shows going forward. Tyler McKeever, another trip to the Hall of Fame. Thanks, guys. $500 in the MLB Beanball. And Zemanuel chopped to 24 others, including Awesemo DFS for the win on FanDuel. Turned 60 in the roughly 1,200. All right, yeah. Oh, and of course, shout out to the best DFS content in the industry. Thanks, Emmanuel. Appreciate you. And Sean, how about Sean? Enjoyed chopping with Alex, chopping a lot lately. Alex in the $6 last night, been running hot in showdowns lately. Shout out to the Stochastic crew for the best content and tools in the game. And Brett comes up next. Just a very simple at Stochastic HOF, man, a few words. $3,000 in the jab step. And how about Crash Money? He's been up here a bunch lately. Turned 80 in the 600 with first place in the pinch hit and third in the wiffle ball. Thanks to the whole Stochastic crew for great tools, and to EMAC and Terry McBride for a great show today, and NewsGod for great customer service, getting me going on baseball. Guys, just going out to everybody. A lot of love for everyone here. Jay, hey team, won this on the 511 slate. All lineup generator. Yeah, love to see that one. One entry, third out of almost 11,000, $2 in the 750. Using the MLB lineup generator, as you guys know, 50% off for your first week, less than $4.50 for the lineup generator for your first week. And we got Justin. Sometimes you don't hit for weeks. Sometimes all the projections, stars align. Nice 3-day MLB showdown heater. Couldn't do it without Stochastic. Yeah, dude. Awesome heater right there. Looks like you're back in the black, my friend. Jorn, Woke up to a bink. Thanks for the advice, fellas. $500 in the MLB pinch hit on a $25 entry. And Matthew Bellman, back-to-backs from Bellman. MLB contributor here at Stochastic. Dude's just been absolutely raking. Yay baseball, 100K, 60K. Now, of course, guy's playing a decent amount in these entries, but he can because he wins a lot. Just like FanDuel has been decent as he shouts out Player Q DFS, our own Neil Orfield. Another $100,000 win. The screenshots from Matthew have been absolutely insane lately. Dave Oliver, you guys are the best, and thank you for your great advice and tools. First out of 1360, first turns that into $2,000. And Adam, this one's odd. Stochastic has daddy feeling real sexy after turning 25 cents into 500 last night. Go Hawks. And then he adds Eric Lindquist here, which is suspect, but we continue. And Tyler, again, third time this month in the top 5 for Tyler. Donkey, weird slate, but nice ROI in the $95,000 entry nickel contest. Stochastic tools rule the world. That they do, my friend. Congratulations. And Colby, please excuse my Twitter skills, but top 3, field of 5K or more, barely making both, $2 into $250. Always been a fan of the great YouTube information and would love to try out the tools. Well, you got it, fella. They are yours for the next month. And finally, Clay Miller. This is the result I sought. Thanks to Stochastic and my Premium Plus FC subscription takedown. $1 brought 50, first to 356. Yes, thanks to the tools. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We've got it right here for you. All you got to do, download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stochastic HOF. Get that free month, Stochastic Plus Platinum, and get inducted or welcome back into the Hall of Fame every single week.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for MLB Live Before Lock, and going to be a lot more baseball content coming your way in the near future because NBA, at most, we have 7 games of the NBA season left. More likely, though, it's going to be 4 or 5 as my guy Nikola Jokic walks his way, hopefully, to his first ever NBA championship. So a lot of baseball content coming your way, especially during the summer months. And all the more reason you guys should like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get alerted when all of our baseball content is going live. For today, we are sponsored by Underdog, so we'll be talking a little bit more about them as we go. And a big baseball slate here today, Neil. 13 games tonight. We've never really talked about this before. What is your preference in terms of size of a baseball slate? What's your ideal size is what I want to know.
I think I like maybe like a 6 to 8 games. It's different. Like NBA, I have a clear, like I like kind of mid-range slates. Baseball, I'm trying to like, because I kind of enjoy short slates sometimes. I get more creative on short slates. I do more like different stack types, different like pitcher versus hitter, those kind of rules on short slates. So it is a little bit more interesting for me. Certainly it's easier with larger slates. So I guess I'd probably say this is fine for me. A 13 game slate, I don't mind it. As far as playing, as far as doing content on it, I prefer a shorter slate. But yeah, I like a larger slate. How about you?
Yeah, like midish to small for baseball is like absolute ideal for me. It's the same thing I say, everybody. 4 to 6, I think, is the perfect size. That's where I really think is the sweet spot, because you get like some kind of, decision points. One thing I don't like quite as much about 13 game slates is that there isn't as much leverage to be found, right? You're just kind of looking at what are the overall best options, which is fine. But where I find the most fun in playing baseball DFS is just where can you find leverage, right? Which pitchers can you play against chalky offenses? Which ways can you really get underweight to the field, find leverage? You can't really do that in the same way on 13 game slates, but still, right, there's some interesting stuff to talk about that we are going to be breaking down for you guys right here in a second. As you do come in, like I said, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and our sponsor today, Underdog, who, if you guys haven't signed up here yet, a couple reasons you should be doing it. Number one, if you sign up using our link, you're going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. Underdog, they have pick'em plays that you could play there. So you could play pick'em against the house there. In addition, though, Of course, they've got their massive best ball contest, which I know Neil has been involved in for football. I've been doing a lot of DraftKings drafts so far, and so I'm going to start diving into some of the underdog ones as well. So looking forward to that. Your deposit bonus money up to that $100 is not only going to be applicable for pick'em sites, it's also going to be for the DFS contest that run at Underdog, as well as also being able to enter best ball. So how many best ball drafts have you done now?
Right around. So I think I did 34 pre NFL draft. And I think I've done about 50 since then. Plus I'm involved in like 15 or 20 going on right now. So, getting up there, probably close to 100 if all my drafts finish now. I'm glad I wasn't the only one reading chat. Everybody had the same. Their minds in the gutter when you're asking me what size I like.
Yeah,
everybody
which
had the
I
same
don't
reaction.
know, which was clearly not my intention. I don't know what chat is thinking.
I wasn't sure if that was your intention. It was like
never, absolutely never would I imply something like that. And as for my hat today, I've really enjoyed the hat yesterday, but it was also incredibly stupid. And I knew that it was something that if I do it once, it was going to have some entertainment value, but it was something that I had the potential to really run into the ground, which I didn't want to do. So you want to leave people wanting more, which is also why, some people maybe tend towards the 3 or 4 size, because it's like, hey, pretty good, but maybe a little bit more. So that was how I felt with the hat, as well as it was good as a one-off, but I don't want to run it into the ground or anything like that. So the hat has been retired temporarily. Who knows? Maybe there might be a time in the future that it comes out of retirement, but in the near future, there's no plans for the hat. And by the way, I've done about 35 best ball drafts myself in entirety right now. So are you doing more of the slow drafts or the fast drafts?
Way more of the slow drafts, because fast drafts I do them like when I have an hour of time generally. Slow drafts I do like right now I probably have 15, 20 slow drafts going right now. I kind of at all times have 15 to 20 slow drafts going on. So yeah, I definitely do more of the slow drafts. As we get later in the summer and I have a little bit more time, I'll probably do more fast drafts. But yeah, for now, mostly targeting slow drafts. And then fast drafts is like, I often enter fast drafts when news breaks, and I think something is going to change how much I like a player, like how I would rank them in best ball. Then I'll jump into a fast draft. But yeah, typically more slow drafts for me.
Yeah, I'll get into it. I was going to get into a little bit more, but we got a 13-game baseball slate to talk about, so let's go break it down. But really wanted to hammer home the point that if you guys want to sign up at Underdog, use the link we have below or use that promo code Stochastic, and you will get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And their pick and play does have up to a 20x parlay that you could play over there on their pick'em site. So something to take advantage of for sure. But let's start talking about the pitchers for tonight, Neil, where, it's a big slate. So there's no kind of real crazy chalk, right? The most popular pitcher we have is Zach Gallen. He's projected for 32% ownership on DraftKings. He's projected for 22% ownership on FanDuel. When I was running out my lineups and building on my sets, I came in fairly even with the field on Zach Gallen. He's the most popular pitcher on the slate. If you guys are playing cash games, go ahead and play Zach Gallen. I think he's one of the easier cash options that we have of the day. For tournaments, though, what are you going to be doing with him relative to his ownership?
I am. Well, what do we have his ownership at? We have Zach Gallen at
32% on DK and 22% on FanDuel right now.
Yeah, so I set my cap on pitchers at 40% just because I was like, that Zach Gallen's is the highest we have of anybody at 21% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So I felt like that was a good way to spread out my exposure a little bit by setting my cap at 40%. I'm sort of thinking like, man, that feels so safe, like so likely that Zach Gallen gets at least like 20 DraftKings points that I'm a little bit questioning myself. Like maybe I should set that cap higher, but currently I set my cap at 40%. I got to 40% Zach Gallen. No
surprise there, right? If you're if anything you're doing, if you set your cap at 100% Zach Gallen, you probably get fairly close to that as well. Just when there's a 13 game slate, there's a lot of cheap bats that come into play as one-offs, which makes it easier to spend up to the stud pitchers. So Zach Gallen, definitely, like I said, safe cash option. I don't have an issue with his ownership in large field tournaments at all. And any pivots they're liking, though, if you're paying up a pitcher and maybe you're looking to get away from Zach Gallen, is there another pay up option that you like getting to differentiate from Zach Gallen in lineups that don't have him in them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Shane McClanahan is a great option in Wrigley Field. Getting just 13% ownership somehow, 17% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Really like McClanahan. I'll always have some interest in Joe Ryan, even in a tough matchup with Houston. At 4.5% projected ownership, 12.6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Definitely willing to go there. Gilbert, obviously I could make the pivot to Gilbert as well, despite the tough matchup. Senga looks okay against the Phillies. I'm willing to go to basically all of the high-end pitchers. I think at least to some extent today, we've got Bryce Elder against Oakland. I don't know if you'd call him a direct pivot as well from Zach Gallen. It's obviously a bit of a price difference there, but all of the high-end pitchers, I think I'm willing to go to some extent. I think my favorite probably would be Shane McClanahan. We've got a little bit of positive leverage there, Joe Ryan also has some positive leverage, but the tougher matchup. So I think it'd probably be Shane McClanahan would be my favorite pivot off of Zach Gallen.
Yep, he's my favorite one as well. I'm playing him in my single entry lineup today, and he's expensive. But like I said before, when you get these 13-game slates, a lot of hitters pop up, like a Raimel Tapia, for instance, who's close to min price on DraftKings. It makes it really easy with him in a positive matchup, hitting in a premier lineup spot. It just makes it easier to get up to some of those stud-type pitchers who are under-owned, like a Shane McClanahan, and there's clear upside here. 1.97 ERA, 3.31 expected ERA for McClanahan. And the strikeout stuff has been great, as per usual, for him, 29.1%. One thing I'm a little disappointed in, which is not McClanahan's fault, is sportsbooks were way underpricing him to start the year. Because if you remember the end of last baseball season, Neil, McClanahan got banged up. He was dealing with what looked like a really serious injury because he left a bullpen session crying before a game, holding his arm. And you think like, oh boy, this is a significant injury. And then all of a sudden he comes back 2 weeks later and was just able to pitch. He wasn't nearly as good as he was early in the season. But what happened then is sportsbooks were really weighing what happened with McClanahan at the end of the year. And he was like fairly regularly with 5.5 strikeout props. And he was destroying that number. Like it was the easiest money to make of the season so far, which is betting McClanahan over 5.5 strikeouts or over 4.5 when he was heavily juiced. So they've caught up and they've given him more appropriate strikeout props now. But it looks like the DFS world still not really getting to McClanahan. So I like him for large field tournaments. I like him in single entry as well to differentiate a little bit from Zach Gallen. I think he's going to have really low ownership in some of those kinds of contests. So Shane McClanahan for me. And then the other guy who I am eyeing that I also know you mentioned, Kodai Senga, absolutely infuriating as a pitcher because there is zero consistency with this guy at all. Sometimes he goes out there like he won GPPs 2 slates ago at almost no ownership, comes back the next slate, really popular, absolutely shits the bed and is terrible. Today, he is kind of modest ownership, but just for the strikeout upside of him, he has really good stuff. He's a really good splitter. So I'm going to be overweight to the field on Senga as well. Those are the two guys I'm gravitating towards. I know you had mentioned Senga. Large field tournaments, are you going to be overweight to him or just in your player pool?
Yeah, so I'm only playing. No, I am overweight to the field on Senga. So I'm only playing 21. I'm playing the 20 max on DraftKings. I have 40% Senga. He actually reached my max there. So yeah, I'll be overweight to the field. Things could change between now and then, but wouldn't shock me if I'm overweight to the field by a good amount on Senga as well.
Yeah, so I definitely think that Senga is a guy who very risky, right? Very risky, but sometimes you kind of like that variance, particularly in GPPs, because he's the potential to be the highest scoring pitcher on the slate just based on his strikeout upside. The problem is that when it goes sideways for him, it can go very sideways because he'll just walk everybody and not get any outs. So hopefully we get the good version of Senga, not the shitty version, but time will tell. If you guys are risk adverse, don't play Kodai Senga today. There are a lot of options, but I like embracing the risk and leaning into it. So Senga, somebody I'm going to be getting to. Couple of important super chats here. One of them coming once again from Jordan Klein. And Jordan wants to know, Neil, tell us about the bachelor party. What ended up happening?
Yeah, so I'll give you the short version of it. Try to give it short. So I'm, in this friend group. This is my law school friends. I went to law school like 4 years after I graduated from undergrad. So I was one of the older people in the group, like in my group of friends from law school. I'm the second oldest. There's one guy older than me. He is 41, maybe 42, and he's the guy getting married. So we went to, he warned us like going into it. He was like, oh, you guys aren't gonna be able to hang with my Austin friends. You're not gonna be able to hang with the Austin friends. Like they're big drinkers, big partiers. We go to Austin. The first night, we're not hanging out with those guys, right? So we stay out till about 11 o'clock. And he says, okay, I want to go to bed. Everybody agrees. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I guess we'll take it easy tonight so that we can go hard tomorrow night. we get to dinner the second night, and this night, my friends, Austin friends, were there, and they're of course all guys in their 40s. And he starts by telling them, "Oh, we went really hard yesterday, so I'm going to take it easy today. Maybe we'll just go home after dinner tonight." I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So I am, despite my age, I am somebody who likes to stay out late and have fun, and like I wanted to see Austin. I want to hang out more. I was kind of disappointed in my friends, and I know that this group of friends of mine is pretty lame in general. They're just like they're not the types who are going to stay out late partying. Some of them also have young kids, so I think that factors into it. But it was not a wild and crazy. I mean, we did some shots. We're drinking throughout the day, but nothing all that exciting. It was fun. The food was incredible. Like every meal I had in Austin was great. I had fun. I hang out with her. I shouldn't say that it was like I'm making it sound like it was bad. It was a great time, but we did not have the wild and crazy bachelor party weekends that you might expect sometimes.
There we go. Nothing crazy. Maybe to Jordan's disapproval. I think Jordan wanted to get some raunchy tales of a bachelor party, but it's more fun than my weekend. I've had an infection in my lungs, and I've just been taking a lot of steroids and antibiotics, and now my stomach is very upset. So that to me was like that was my weekend. So yours was more fun than mine as far as
does sound more fun.
Goes.
Yeah.
I did have the bucket hat to wear around town though, so that was nice. But
I will say though, my stomach, not a huge fan. I love the like fatty, greasy brisket. My stomach, like hours later, tells me it does not love it. So that I had some of the same issues that you had maybe with the stomach.
Yeah, but hey, you got the bachelor party you went through, and Neil could still hang. I think that's something that we really, really have a takeaway from that. Neil can hang.
I can still hang. I can hang. Yeah.
Neil can hang. How many more years of hanging do you think you have in you before you're a little past prime, though?
I think that I'm going to be hanging until I'm an old man. I think I'm always going to be the guy who wants to be out hanging, and yeah, most likely.
There we go. Love to hear it. Ace of Spade has left us his normal super chat. He wants to know DK tiers. Who are the best options for tiers? Yeah, so going to run through this because I built out lineups anticipating this question. Here's what I'm going to do. Going to tell you the players I got the most exposure to overall in each tier, and then we'll look at some of the potential stacking options for DK tiers, because that's always going to be key. How can you combine the players and get some correlation? Tier 1, Devers. I think he's the number one guy to go to there. I know that we've got Trout, Ohtani, Yordan Alvarez. It's funny, just the name value, you would think surely Devers isn't the guy to go to there. But it is Devers for me just because of the matchup here. He's going to be in Cincinnati going up against Ben Lively, who's not great against left-hand hitters. So I like Devers in tier 1 for a lot of the same reason. Masataka Yoshida in tier 2. You got a lefty there in Cincinnati. Makes a whole lot of sense. Or sorry, I should say going up against not in Cincinnati. It's in Boston, but still a weak right-handed pitcher in Ben Lively. So I do like going to the lefties for the Boston Red Sox. And then if we look at tier 3, the one I got the most exposure to is Paul Goldschmidt. Tier 4, Nolan Arenado. Tier 5, Wander Franco. And then tier 6, Nolan Gorman. So this actually works out pretty conveniently for stacking because tier 1, you can get Devers and Yoshida together. Tier 3, we've got Goldschmidt. Tier 4, there's Arenado. Tier 6, Nolan Gorman. So you got like 2 mini stacks, and then you can just plug somebody else in tier 5. I think that's a good way to go about tiers today and, really get the most amount of correlation possible in there. Is there any other super chats?
I was just going to pull up Josh's tweet because Josh did a tiers percentage, which if you had asked me, I was just going to do that. That's all.
Yeah. So what Josh did, Josh built out a simulator for tiers using ChatGPT. He told me it took him 10 minutes to make.
Oh, really? Damn.
Yeah. That's the crazy powerful future.
Adam too. Josh and Adam have been really exploring ChatGPT and using it for DFS. I think I'm probably falling behind in my ChatGPT. I've never tried it.
It's pretty cool. So like I don't know how to use it as intricately as like Josh is using it, but yeah, I mean you could just ask it to do stuff for you, and it will just do it. And it could be something as complex as that too, or at least seemingly complex as build a simulator for tiers. And Josh said, yeah, it took 10 minutes to do in ChatGPT, which is fairly wild. Super chat from Jorge Giacomi. Jorge says, Austin has good strip clubs. Went in October for a bachelor party with friends, like your friends, Neil. And I was the one taking them to strip clubs and getting the shots. So I feel you now. But he wants to know what your favorite low-owned stack is at the end of it as well.
All right. So Jorge is saying that I should have been dragging them out. I feel like at this point, we're at the age where my friends don't want to be like forced to go out. So I didn't. All right, let's see. Favorite low-owned stack. So let's see. I have to look at I have stacks that I know I like, but I want to look at what the actual ownership is on each of them.
I can tell you my favorite one, the one that I'm getting the most exposure to, that I'm overweight to. And by the way, everything is going to be somewhat low owned today. We've only got one stack on the entire slate, the Atlanta Braves, that are projected for north of 10% ownership. So I guess let's look at something that's sub 5%. The one that I'm honing in on is the Baltimore Orioles at home against Cal Quantrill. Very low ownership going to this team. And when I was running out my lineups, this is a spot that I'm getting quite overweight to. Quantrill is a pitch to contact type pitcher, which could be an issue considering some of the weather we're seeing in Baltimore right now. It is hitter friendly. And also the Orioles offense is just good this year. They make a lot of contact. They put the ball in play, favorable hitting conditions. So I like them against a pitcher who pitches to contact in Cal Quantrill, and only 3.4% projected ownership going to the O's. That is the team that I'm the most overweight to. A team that you are eyeing for low ownership as a stack.
Yeah, I kind of like the Blue Jays today. Brandon Belt only 2,500 is pretty crazy in the 4-hole. Alejandro Kirk only 3,000. Just the whole lineup is not the whole lineup is cheap, but like it's getting really low ownership. There are cheap aspects to the lineup, and it's the Blue Jays. Like we know that the Blue Jays can put up a lot of runs, so I really like the Blue Jays today, despite not the best matchup in the world.
All right, so there we go. We got one from myself, one from Neil. Two AL East teams playing in different games, but I went with the Orioles. Neil's going with the Blue Jays for his favorite low-owned stack, and that is a special for you there, Jorge. So that is what we are going to be riding with. Let's get back to talking about the pitchers, because I want to wrap this up, and then we're going to look at some of our favorite props for Underdog. We'll build lineups in the lineup generator, and then we'll talk about some of our other favorite stacks for today. We've talked about our priorities at the high end of pitching. Are there any value pitchers that you're gravitating towards or like for today, Neil?
Yeah, let me take a look.
So as you are pulling that up, something I'm going to add to this is when we have slates that are 13 games, I very rarely am going to be prioritizing a lot of cheap pitchers. There are always going to be some circumstance where there's cheap pitchers that stand out, but by and large, it's so easy to pay up for the more expensive pitchers, and they give you such a higher floor on these kind of slates as well. So it's not hard to pay up for the Shane McClanahans, the Kodai Senga, Zach Gallen, Joe Ryan. Well, maybe not Joe Ryan for this particular slate, but I'm just pulling out some of the expensive pitchers in general. But the ones that I get the four pitchers I get the most exposure to are Gallen, Senga, McClanahan, and Bryce Elder. And it's just not hard to pay up for pitching on a 13 games. There were so many cheap hitters become viable as punt plays, both DraftKings and FanDuel. I mentioned that before. So I don't really have too many cheap guys that I'm prioritizing. So I want to ask you if there's any of them that you are prioritizing in your builds, and then we'll try to find if there's any contrarian ones that we do think we should be digging into.
Yeah, there are none that I am prioritizing, and in fact, there are none that I'm getting to. Like at least in my most recent crunch, I played 7 pitchers, and I think the cheapest of them is maybe Bryce Elder, or Nestor Cortez might be cheaper, but nobody who's super cheap that I'm actually playing today. If I were going to, you can certainly consider Brandon Bielak against my Twins, coming in at 4.4% ownership, 12.6% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. He looks good at 6,800. The Twins a little bit boom bust in terms of there are some strikeouts there. So you can certainly go there. He looks good in the top pitchers tool. You can go to Brian Bayo against Cincinnati as well. He's just 7,000. You could consider that. Johan Oviedo in San Francisco. Obviously, it's a pretty good spot being in San Francisco. That ballpark looks pretty good. And then I guess you consider Sean Manaea as well against Pittsburgh. But again, I'm not playing any of those pitchers. I think those are some that I might consider if I made a stack that I really liked and I needed a cheaper pitcher. Those are some that I would think about.
I have a couple lines with Brandon Bielak, but doesn't make him a priority by any means. Brian Bayo at 7K, I agree with you. I think he's probably the safest pitcher on the low end, but he's somewhat popular today. He's projected for 14.4% ownership on DK. We've got Bayo projected for 5% ownership on FanDuel, which is not all that significant, but on a single pitcher site, it does make him one of the 6 or so most popular pitchers on the slate. So there's nothing I'm really looking at too heavily on the cheap end. Like I said, I've got a few Bielak lineups. If there was less ownership going to Brian Bayo, then yeah, he'd probably be making it into my player pool, but we have him as one of the most negatively leveraged pitchers on the slate. So it's really hard for me to get there. It's a slate to pay up for pitching. That's how I'm generally going to feel about most large slates, and don't really have too much else to add about the pitching. I think it's one to be pretty condensed on. Are there any pitchers that you're getting exposure to that are in your field that we haven't talked about yet?
So I'll just read off the pitches I'm getting to. I'm getting to hitting my cap on Zach Gallen, Logan Gilbert, Kodai Senga. And again, this is just, I set a cap. I didn't do anything to get to more or less of any of these guys. It's just based on projection. Then I'm getting to less than the cap, but still getting to a good amount of Nestor Cortez, Tony Gonsolin, and then I'm just getting to 10% Shane McClanahan, 5% Bryce Elder.
There we go. Yeah, I have no issue with that whatsoever. And if you guys have any questions for us in Discord, at me so we could answer some of those. But before we do, let's go and look at some of the top overall picks for the day in our Pick'em Pro tool. So this is going to cover not just MLB, but also NBA. So the final few games of the NBA season, we've got all of that accounted for in here as well. So Underdog, we're going to focus on because they are the sponsor of today's show. Mentioned before, if you sign up using our promo code, up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit when you sign up using the promo code Stochastic. And then also, as for our Pick'em Pro tool, it's going to cover Underdog, Prize Picks, NHA. If you guys play on any of those sites, you could get access to that. And if you use the link that we have below the first time you sign up, 50% off, so you could get it for as cheap as $5. But let's look at some of our most recent lines that are standing out in the Pick'em Pro tool. I'm going to refresh this to make sure that we're looking at the most recent data we have. And as I'm refreshing this also, Jordan, if you have that screenshot I sent you, I want to shout out Dave DFS over on Twitter because he's been using our Pick'em Pro tool and he shouted out to us a $2,500 win. He had won the other day, tailed just some of the top picks from our tool, made a 6-leg flex parlay. All of them ended up hitting. He turned $100 into $2,500 using the tool that we have below. And a pretty good return when, like I said, you could sign up for the first time using the link we have below and get access to it for less than $5. Pretty good return right there. Pick'em Pro, refreshing. And yeah, let's look at what stands out the most from Underdog, Neil. And our top projected pick of the day is under 4.5 strikeouts for Alex Faedo. So we've got Faedo at home against the Detroit Tigers. One thing I'll also add about this is when I was looking early in the day, I believe that this was like minus 130 at traditional sportsbook. So a pretty good line shopping value type thing here where, there's no juice on these lines at Underdog. Just this is what the prop is. You're looking at an over or an under. So when you consider that it's something that's, a little juiced at sportsbooks, then you're just getting it at no juice here over to Underdog. Alex Faedo under 4.5 strikeouts. Is there anything that you see in our projections that's kind of popping out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I always like, I also like the over on 3 strikeouts for Ben Lively. I like betting over, so give me that opportunity. I'll take it. And the line is just 3 strikeouts again for Ben Lively. So that one's kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's you could take the under 5.5 strikeouts for Brian Bayo. I think in general, strikeout props tend to be, the projections tend to be more efficient, I should say, on strikeout props. So I'm a little bit more inclined to hit those than like the total hits or total bases props. I'll play them. I played some today, but those are a little bit scarier for me because it just takes one to ruin everything. Whereas strikeouts, there's a little bit more wiggle room, so it's a little bit more efficient in terms of our projection. So yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to go to those strikeout props.
All right. So those are a couple ones that are projecting well for us to read them off again. Alex Faedo under 4.5 strikeouts, and then Brian Bayo under 5.5 strikeouts. Now let's build some lineups for the people. Let's look at our MLB lineup generator, the newest tool that we have over at Stochastic. And Jordan, if you could throw this up on the screen, that would be appreciated so we could see what it is we have. We're going to do a couple things here. We're going to build out FanDuel lineups. We're going to build out DraftKings lineups. As you can see, Jordan he was cheating. He was already building out lineups. Now he's scrambling to backtrack and get it off here. So we'll build contrarian. Actually, let's build balanced lineups because it's a big 13-game slate. I don't think we really have to go crazy contrarian. Yeah. We'll start with DraftKings. We're going to build out lineups, and here's how it works. If you guys haven't used this yet, it's one of the easiest tools we have to use at Stochastic.com. It is great for beginner-level DFS players, or if you guys are more familiar with NBA DFS, dipping your toes into the waters of MLB, come check out our MLB lineup generator. Another one, if you sign up using the link that we have below for the lineup generator, 50% off the first time you sign up. So the weekly package, you can get this for less than $5. So you just click different stack types. So let's just go all stack types. We'll get different ones mixed in. And then it's just going to build lineups for you. We'll go balanced here, Jordan. So we'll see what ends up coming up. And you'll see some of our ownership projections there. You could save lineups you like, discard lineups you don't like, up to 20 of them, and you could upload those directly into DraftKings and or FanDuel, whatever site you guys play on. So what we're going to do, as I see YouTube chat is discussing strip clubs right now, we're going to discuss our favorite plays that end up popping up in here, what stands out to us, and then we'll do the same for FanDuel afterwards. I think this is a really good way to just get an overview of which players that we're projecting to be some of the top options to go to when you build out lineups. So one thing that stands out immediately, Neil, 92% Zach Gallen. We got a ton of him in our 20 lineups we built here. What else is standing out to you about some of these lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that is the biggest thing that stands out to me as well. That it's a good amount of Jake Berger also. What is that? 46% of Jake Berger is a ton. That was so it's, it's hard to see all the lineups like this, but when Adam and I were looking at it earlier today, one thing that's interesting about today in particular is that you don't have a ton of, other than Zach Gallen, apparently in this, we weren't even into that. I did 20 lineups. I think the most I got of any player this morning was 50% of one player. So I didn't get to any crazy 92% ownership. It was a little bit more spread out today, which is kind of interesting. Like you kind of shows you how, you can build a lot of good plus CV lineups around a bunch of different stacks. It's all about like balancing out your stack, which is obviously the best part about this tool, is that it'll balance out your stacks for you. Even if you are playing a bunch of different types of stacks, that's what's kind of cool about it. But yeah, I guess, it's, we do have a little bit more ownership going to just a few players here than Adam and I were seeing this morning, but still, like, outside of those top three, everybody's under 40%. And it's a little bit more flat than it often is on like shorter slates. So kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. So one thing also, do you remember what settings you used this morning?
We did balanced and we did all stack types.
So here's what's going to be the biggest difference, I think, from this morning versus building lineups out now, and why you'd more predominantly get to a pay up option like Zach Gallen. As the lineups come out, especially on a 13-game slate, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but you just get more value that pops up. Like Raimel Tapia is $2,200 in a great matchup. I presume he's not somebody that you would have really predominantly gotten to this morning.
Yeah, good call. That's a good point. Like he probably wasn't in our projected lineup this morning, so then he comes out and he's this great value option. That's a really good point.
Yeah, so it makes it easier to pay up for a pitcher like Zach Gallen. So the pitchers we got to the most here, Gallen and Senga, and then as some of the value hitters, Jake Berger, Raimel Tapia. Pay up hitters we got to the most here, Mookie Betts, Luis Robert as well. So yeah, you're seeing some pay up options. It looks like we're getting to mostly Dodger stacks and then some White Sox stacks in here. What other pitch? Let's scroll down and see. Logan Gilbert is a pitcher we got to. And let's see.
Senga 31%.
Yeah, probably one other pitcher popped up in some lineups around 10%
Gilbert,
or
23%. Yeah.
Scroll down a little bit more. McClanahan, there was the other one. So 8% of McClanahan. Those
Bryce
are the
Elder,
pitchers.
10%.
Yeah. Yeah. Not too much different than the pitchers we talked about that we liked before. Logan Gilbert's a little bit different. I like McClanahan a little bit more than him, but either way, we're getting to guys who I think are all fairly reasonable. And also, if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. But let's do the same thing for FanDuel, Jordan, because I want to make sure that we are showing the people also some of the best projected players when we run lineups in FanDuel as well. So same deal, all stack types. We'll go FanDuel and we'll build out balanced lineups and see what ends up coming out for us. I'm interested to see, what do you think? Do you think we get to about the same amount of Zach Gallen?
I would guess less. I mean, you only get one pitcher here, so my guess would just be less.
You are not wrong. 44% of Zach Gallen, and still the most roster pitcher for us. You'll see a lot of synchronicity between the two, right? Zach Gallen, our most rostered pitcher here. He was our most rostered pitcher on DK. Kodai Senga, our second most rostered pitcher on DK, second most on FanDuel. And then same deal here too. Dodger stacks, White Sox stacks. Luis Robert, Jake Berger, Tim Anderson. And then we've got from the Dodgers, Mookie Betts I see popping up there. Who else? Freddie Freeman's there. Another White Sox there. Eloy Jimenez. So yeah, it looks like when we're running lineups in the lineup generator, something to keep a note of, guys. The stacks that are popping up most predominantly, White Sox and Dodgers, both DraftKings and FanDuel. And then also for DraftKings and FanDuel, Zach Gallen and Kodai Senga. That's what it looks like when we're simulating out the slate, our projections like most predominantly, and no disagreement for me. Anything else that catches your eye here?
No, yeah, just that same thoughts that it's a lot of the same players that we like on FanDuel. We also like on DraftKings.
All right. And if you guys, once again, you want to sign up for this, use the link below. You can get it for as cheap as $5 the first time you sign up. Let's go talk about some of our favorite stacks of the slate. And also, if you guys have questions for us in Discord, one of the perks of being a Stochastic Plus Platinum member, hit me up and we can answer some of your questions as we go. And that'll break up some of the just at messages I'm getting from Aton and Eric about the bets that they're posting for everybody. Stacks. We talked about the ones that we really do like in the lineup generator tool, Neil. We also talked about some contrarian stacks that we like via the question from Jorge before. But if we're talking about some of just the chalk of the slate, and there's really only one big chalky spot, the Atlanta Braves. They're projected for 11.4% ownership over on DK. That makes them the most popular stack of the slate. On FanDuel, we have them projected for, I'm actually just going to refresh this to make sure I'm looking at the most recent number. FanDuel, we have them projected for, let's see, 9%. So the second most popular stack on FanDuel. Boston, the most popular stack on FanDuel. But we've got the Atlanta Braves, the only team projected for double-digit ownership on DK. Good spot for them against JP Sears. Also just a shitty Oakland team that has a bad bullpen. What are you doing with them as a popular team that's a little bit negatively leveraged in our projections?
Yeah, so I'm only playing 5 primary stacks today, and they are not among them. They obviously look good. They have the best top stack odds on the entire slate, 8.7% chance of being the top stack on the board. But we have them at 12.4% ownership. There's just, with a 91% chance that they aren't the top stack on the board. If I'm not playing 150 lineups, I just rather go other places than Atlanta. They are at Oakland too. It's not a great hitter's park. It's obviously they're a great stack. They're playing against JP Sears, good matchup. Just the fact that it's in Oakland and they're getting way more ownership than any other team on the slate, I'm inclined to fade Atlanta and just cross my fingers.
And are you fading all of their hitters? Like, are you looking at Acuna as a one-off in your lineups?
Yeah, I'm definitely not fading all of their hitters. Okay. I'm just fading them as a 5-man stack. I also didn't even fade them as my secondary stack. So I actually, in my 20 lineups, I have 20% Acuna. I have 20% Michael Harris. Looks like those are the only two that I'm going to, those are the only 2 bats I actually ended up getting to, it looks like, in my lineups. But yeah, not something, I just didn't want them as my primary stack. I didn't want to have a 5-man Atlanta stack where I'm going to be competing against a bunch of other 5-man Atlanta stacks. So I'm still willing to play them as bats as one-offs, as secondary stacks. Just didn't want to play them as one of my primary stacks.
Yeah, I'm just checking out some of my exposures on my other computer over here, which is what I run my baseball lineups on. And I'm not getting to very many 5-man Braves stacks. I think it's also just, like you said, a product of the ownership. But I still do get to a bunch of these guys as one-offs to the point where I don't have as many 5-man Braves stacks as the field has. But the individual hitters, I have just as much as what the field has. Like Acuna, I have 17% of. Michael Harris, I have 15% of here. So some of those individual hitters, I still get to even with the field. I'm just playing them in different lineups than what it seems the field is doing. So no issue with the Braves. It's a good spot for them against JP Sears, but it's a 13-game slate. Like you, I'd rather take my chances with other teams that are not going to be the single most popular team on a slate of this kind of size. And then on the flip side, how do you feel about the Boston Red Sox? They are projected for double-digit ownership on FanDuel as the most popular team, 10% ownership over there. And then on DraftKings, not quite as popular, but still 6.8%. They're a team that's picking up some steam. Home matchup against Ben Lively. He's no good. The Reds bullpen isn't particularly good. It's the most popular team on FanDuel. How do you view the Boston Red Sox in what is a pretty good matchup on paper, but they're expensive, particularly on DK?
Yeah, I gave them a hard look as one of my stacks to include in my 20 lineups. I didn't end up playing Boston stacks, but I do like them. As you said, it's a good matchup. Playing in Fenway, always helpful. We've got them with slight negative leverage. So just because I'm only playing 20 lineups, they're not a lineup that I chose. I'd rather condense it a little bit more and go to just 5 lineups with a little bit more frequency. So I didn't play Boston, but I do think that they are a great spot here at even at 7% ownership. I think, with this matchup against Cincinnati in Boston, I do still think that they are a very good stack. I'd rather play Boston before I'd play Atlanta.
So then what is your most rostered stack? It's like, which is the team relative to ownership that you're most overweight to? And you're like, that's my squad.
So I played exactly 5 stacks, 20% of each. I played Milwaukee, Toronto, the Mets, St. Louis, and Tampa were my 5 that I chose.
And then of those 5, let's say somebody who's building a single entry lineup right now, because that's going to apply to a lot of our audience, just hand building one lineup. Which offense would you tell them is the one that you think they should be playing in single entry if they're building one lineup out?
I think it'd probably be Toronto, just the most firepower for Toronto. It's not the best matchup, but we've got them at 3.6% projected ownership, 5.6% chance to be in the top stack. I don't think they're going to get a ton of ownership, so it would probably be Toronto if I was just going to play one. How about you?
It's funny because we're actually going to be giving the same answers here because my single entry team is the Baltimore Orioles. And before, when you and I were answering the question that we got from Jorge in the super chat, he had asked what our favorite low-owned offense was. And for me, it was the Baltimore Orioles. It's a team that I'm playing in single entry, and that's what it's going to be for me. I like going to Baltimore. It's a matchup, like I said, it's a pitcher who pitches to contact in Cal Quantrill. Also, a pitcher who, I'll pull up Quantrill's numbers right here. So I have all the ones exactly in front of me as to what they are. But Quantrill, here is his something that stands out to me about going against him. And it's going to also go back to something that you had brought up earlier in the year, Neil. He's never been great in the past, but he hasn't necessarily been terrible either, but doesn't generate strikeouts. A lot of contact he's giving up. So his strikeout rate this year is at 12.8%. That is especially terrible. And do you remember what you said at the beginning of the year, Neil, about how the shift rules could impact some of these pitchers that pitch to contact and maybe don't generate a lot of strikeouts? Well, Cal Quantrill's underlying numbers look fairly similar this year compared to every other year that he's been pitching at the big leagues. Here's the difference, though. As a guy who's pitching to this much, although the strikeout rate is down a little bit, but as a guy who pitches to this much contact, he's a 4.75 ERA, a 5.51 expected ERA. This is that archetype of pitcher that you laid out earlier in the year of a guy who could really struggle from the lack of the shift. I like the Baltimore Orioles as a team with a lot of power against a pitcher like Quantrill that's pitching to contact. So Baltimore for me.
It's not just the shift. It's also the bags are bigger. Can't lead off, or you can't check first base more than twice, I think. So just like every rule is helps out the bats against pitchers who pitch to contact.
Yep, it's something that I've been hip. Well, you were on it first, kind of hip to it. There are certain pitchers that pitch to contact. I've been looking more at it, and Quantrill's always been a pitcher who's actually outperformed his peripheral stats. He's typically been a guy who has like FIPS and expected ERAs in the mid-4 range, and then he's been able to maintain ERAs in the mid-3 range. And it just looks like it's catching up to him this year with a 4.75 ERA, where it doesn't have quite the same advantages. So I like going against Cal Quantrill here by going with the Baltimore Orioles. And now, one of your other stacks that you had, was it I'm trying to remember, what were the stacks you said you liked again?
Toronto, Milwaukee, Tampa. Let me check. I'm forgetting what they were. Milwaukee, Toronto. I missed them. Tampa, St. Louis, and the Mets.
Yeah, I saw some people in chat bring up the Cardinals before as well. But I want to talk a little bit more about the Tampa Bay Rays, who are going up against Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks was good once upon a time. He's not anymore, though. And I think another guy, by the way, a pitch-to-contact type pitcher who's older, doesn't throw particularly hard. Average fastball velocity for him has been right around 87 miles per hour now for the last 5 years. He was never a hard thrower, but he did break into the big leagues throwing like 88, 89 miles per hour. But a heavy ground ball pitcher who also is just going to struggle with some of these new rules and his inability to generate swing and misses. So 6.23 ERA so far this year, 4.8 expected ERA for Kyle Hendricks, super small sample. He's actually only made one start this year, but even if you go back to last year, we saw the regression really start a couple of years ago where he's had an ERA in the high 4 range. But as for the Tampa Bay Rays, what's some of the data from the site that stands out about them?
For the Rays, why I like them? It's it's all I'm using is the top stacks tool on the Rays. We have them with a 7% chance to be in the top stack. We actually, so I've refreshed since I chose the Rays. I'm not going to change it. I like the matchup with Kyle Hendricks. We do have them actually a little bit over owned in the tools. I think we had them under owned when I chose them as one of my stacks. We still have them at 8% projected ownership, 7% chance to be in the top stack. And they've just been crushing the ball all year, which obviously you don't want to be like game log chasing, but I'm not too concerned about the fact that they're getting 8% ownership with a 7% chance to be in the top stack. There's really not much more to it than that. We've seen, as you said, some regression from Kyle Hendricks. I think Adam was saying earlier that he's always thought Kyle Hendricks was a regression candidate, and now we're seeing that. So I think maybe there's a little bit of maybe the books haven't entirely, the lines haven't entirely accounted for the regression that we're seeing yet. So I kind of like to get on these things before the books fully account for it. So I think that played into it as well as they had, I think, a little bit of positive leverage at the time that I chose them. And I think that I'm still fine with, even if we do have a tiny bit of negative leverage, they're still second in the top stack tool in terms of top stack odds overall. So plenty to like about the race here.
And then also only a few minutes left to go here. And just once again, if you guys have any questions for us, throw those into the Discord channel. Are there any super low owned stacks who, if maybe you were playing out a full set of 150 lineups, a team that you're not getting to in your 20 set of lineups, but if you're playing mass multi-entry, any teams that are 1-2% on the either for just because they're really low owned and they rate out decently, or because they're in a favorable matchup or against a pitcher that you think is a little bit too popular. What is the craziest stack do you think is viable for this big slate?
Craziest stack that is viable. I'm going to definitely consider Philadelphia against Kodai Senga. He's just been fairly up and down all year. I'm playing a good amount of Senga here. But I'd be willing to play the Phillies against Senga. I'd also be willing to play the Royals against Miles Mikolas, coming in at just 2.3% ownership. So both of them getting, just around 2% ownership, with, a little bit of positive leverage on both Kansas City and Philadelphia. I'd say those are probably the ones I'd be most likely to play. Yeah, I could consider the Yankees against Logan Gilbert. A little bit of positive leverage there in terms of 1.3% projected ownership, 1.3% chance of being the top stack, but then also a 3% chance of being the top value stack on the board. I guess I could consider the Yankees. Seattle, Nestor Cortez, a little bit boom bust, and he's the Seattle getting less than 1% ownership, a little bit of positive leverage. So that's probably the one, actually. Seattle getting less than 1% ownership, 1.6% chance to be in the top value stack, 1.5% chance to be in the top stack overall. Nestor Cortez has been a little bit boom bust, so it'd probably be Seattle for me.
So for me, the answer is going to be, and by the way, some people in chat are throwing in some of their favorite ones. Minnie Ditkus said the Cubs. Ryan Stubbs said the Cubs. Nick Osteris said KC. For me, it is going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. Sub 1% ownership. Sean Manaea has been a disaster since leaving Oakland. And his numbers so far this year, he is a sub-replacement level pitcher, and there are a ton of red flags. Most notably, Sean Manaea missed some time due to a shoulder injury a couple years ago, and he just hasn't looked the same since. We've seen 11 outings out of Manaea this year. 6.61 ERA, 6.55 expected ERA. Nobody is playing the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I know their offense is garbage, right? They got off to a good start, but I don't think any of us expected it to continue, and it hasn't. But when you're going up against a pitcher who is pitching this poorly and the offense picking up so low ownership, it kind of makes sense to me. They're actually our number one leverage stack rated in the top stacks tool right now. And when that information is coming to me paired with just these really poor numbers of Sean Manaea, is that a team that you can make a case for?
Absolutely. I like that call actually quite a bit. I think I overlooked them a little bit when I was going. As you say, they do have the best leverage on the entire slate. So I do like that call quite a bit, even though, they haven't been as good recently, but we saw how good they can hit earlier in the year, and, wouldn't be that shocking to see them do it again. So yeah, I definitely like that call.
And then one super chat here from the Thunder. This is going to apply probably to me. I don't think you'll be able to answer this one, Neil. The Thunder wants to know, Greg, what is that dairy-free cheese you like? I don't even remember when I brought this up before. I think it was with Lofty we were talking about it. But Cabot, if you go to any of your local grocery store, I'm telling you, it tastes the exact same as regular cheese. It's just lactose free.
Really?
Yep.
Does it melt the same?
It does not melt the same, but okay. Which is very weird. But it tastes the exact same as regular cheese. There's a million flavors of it too. Also stuff I don't like, there's New York cheddar, there's Vermont cheddar, there's New Hampshire cheddar. I don't understand what the difference between the different tastes are supposed to be, because they all taste about the same. But if you're lactose intolerant and you have any issues with dairy, I'm telling you, Cabot cheese is the way to go. And they are not a sponsor of the show, but I will advocate for it because it has greatly changed my ability to eat any kind of cheese.
Jordan Klein disapproves. He says, YOLO, eat real cheese.
Yeah, if you would feel differently, Jordan, if you were allergic to it like I am.
That's probably true.
It puts me out of commission for like 4 days.
In part because YOLO, and you don't want to be out of commission for so long.
Yeah, especially with like the steroids and the antibiotics I'm taking right now. I wouldn't be able to go like 5 minutes without going to the bathroom. Anything else, by the way, Neil, that we haven't talked about yet? We've only got a couple minutes left here. Do you want to bring to the people before we finish? Any individual one-off hitters you're getting a lot of, or anything that didn't pop up during the course of the show?
Yeah, no individual one-off hitters that I'm getting a crazy amount of. I'd say on a slate this size, I'm inclined on DraftKings to play full 5-man primary stacks more often than a smaller slate. Generally on smaller slates, I'd be more likely to play like, 4-3, 4-4 type stacks. I think I'm a little bit more inclined here to go to full 5-man primary stacks on DraftKings. So that's one thing. We didn't talk about how you change stacks based on the size of a slate, but I'd say I'm generally more inclined to play larger stack sizes on bigger slates. On FanDuel, same thing. But then you can only play 4 on FanDuel. So that's, I'm usually playing 4 anyway.
And then as a follow-up, once again, to the super chat that we have, Cabot is spelled C-A-B-O-T. That's how you get it. Just Cabot cheese. Yeah, like when I go to like the shop right in town, which is in walking distance of my house, they have like a whole section for just dairy-free cheeses, and that is included there. Looking at the Discord, we do have a question that came in from Einstein. He wants to know, how do I feel about Manaea today? I prefer the other side of the game. I like being on the Pirates more than I like being on Manaea. And then Einstein also wants to know what I think about the Cardinals as a stack today. And the St. Louis Cardinals going up against Zach Greinke, they look a little bit underowned. I don't have an issue with getting to them at all. They are a little expensive, which doesn't necessarily fit with my ideal lineup construction for today. But still, I think the Cardinals going up against Zach Greinke. Greinke in the same vein as when we talked about Kyle Hendricks before. I can't imagine Greinke is going to continue to be effective. So Cardinals are a team that I think are about appropriately owned. I don't have an issue getting to them in large field tournaments. Were they one of the teams in your
They are.
set?
They're one of the 5 teams that I'm playing today is the Cardinals. So yeah, go ahead and play them.
All right. So go ahead and play the Cardinals then, Einstein. Neither Neil or I have any issues with them. Guys, we've reached the end of the show. Thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. More baseball content coming your way. We got MLB deep dives, live before locks, pretty much every day during the summer, especially with NBA wrapping down. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. Good luck with all your lineups tonight. See you back here tomorrow.